became a cop when I was 23 years old, fresh out of the academy with polished boots and a badge that still had that new metal smell. They assigned me to the 7-3 precinct in Brownsville, Brooklyn. If you don't know Brooklyn, Brownsville is where they send rookies to either make them or break them. High crime, low hope, and the kind of streets that teach you real fast that the badge doesn't make you bulletproof. My name is Cormac Dwyer. 11 years on the force now, still in uniform, still working patrol. Some guys chase promotions, detective shields, cushioned desk jobs. Not me. I like the street. I like knowing my sector, the faces, the corners, the buildings that always seem to call 911 right around 2 a.m. I like being the first one there when something goes wrong, not the guy who shows up 3 hours later with a notepad and a theory. It was late March when this whole thing started. One of those nights where winter hasn't quite let go yet, and the wind cuts through your jacket no matter how many layers you wear. I was working the midnight tour, solo patrol in a marked unit, Sector Charlie 7. My usual partner had called out sick, so it was just me, the radio, and the hum of the Crown Vic's engine as I rolled down Atlantic Avenue. The call came in around 1:47 a.m. Dispatch, female voice, calm but clipped. 7-3 Charlie, we have a past assault, possible domestic, 1124 Sutter Avenue, apartment 4D. Caller is a neighbor reporting loud screaming approximately 30 minutes ago. No longer hearing disturbance. Complainant requests anonymous. Are you available? I clicked the radio. Charlie 7 responding. Show me on scene in 3. Sutter Avenue sits deep in the belly of Brownsville. A stretch of aging brick housing projects and walk-ups where people know better than to call the cops unless they absolutely have to. When they do call, it usually means something bad already happened. I pulled up to 1124, a 6-story tenement with rusted fire escapes zigzagging down the face like scars. Most of the windows were dark. A few had foil taped over the glass. One had a Puerto Rican flag hanging limp in the still air. I radioed my arrival, grabbed my flashlight, and headed inside. The building smelled like piss, fried food, and something metallic I couldn't place. The elevator had an out-of-order sign that looked older than me, so I took the stairs. Each floor creaked under my boots. Somewhere above me, a baby was crying. Somewhere below, a television blared a late-night infomercial in Spanish. 4th floor, apartment 4D, was at the end of a narrow hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. I stopped outside the door and listened. Silence. No voices, no movement, nothing. I knocked, firm but not aggressive. NYPD. Need to speak with someone inside. Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. Police, open the door. Still, nothing. I tried the knob, locked. I pressed my ear to the door, that's when I heard it. A faint sound, almost like a whimper, but not quite. More like breathing. Labored, wet, struggling. My hand went to my radio. Dispatch, Charlie 7. I've got possible signs of distress inside the location. Requesting a backing unit to my location. Copy, Charlie 7. Nearest unit is 8 minutes out. Stand by. 8 minutes is a long time when you're standing in a hallway that smells like death and you're hearing someone on the other side of a door who might be dying. I made a decision. I stepped back and threw my shoulder into the door. It didn't budge. These old tenement doors are built like tanks, solid wood, heavy frames. I tried again, harder. The third time, something in the frame splintered and the door flew open. The apartment was dark, except for a dim glow coming from what looked like the kitchen. The air inside was thick, stale, wrong. I pulled my flashlight and swept the room. Small living area, couch covered in clothes, a crooked coffee table with empty beer bottles and a pizza box. No people. NYPD, if anyone's inside, make yourself known. The breathing sound came again, louder now, from a room to my left. I moved toward it, flashlight up, hand on my holster. The door was halfway open. I pushed it with my foot and aimed the beam inside. It was a bedroom, barely furnished, a mattress on the floor, no frame, clothes piled in the corner. And on the mattress, a woman, mid-30s, curled on her side facing the wall. She wasn't moving, her back rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Blood, dark and dry, streaked down her neck and pooled on the pillow under her head. "Ma'am," I said, softer now, stepping inside slowly. "I'm a police officer. I'm here to help. Can you hear me?" She didn't respond, didn't turn, didn't flinch. I moved closer, knelt beside the mattress, and gently touched her shoulder. Her skin was cold, clammy. I rolled her slightly toward me, and that's when I saw her face. Her left eye was swollen shut, purple and black. Her lip was split, crusted with blood. Her nose looked broken. But what stopped me cold was her right eye. It was open, staring straight ahead, unblinking, like she was looking at something I couldn't see. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I asked again, checking her pulse. It was there, faint but steady. Her breathing hitched, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "He took her." I leaned in closer. "Who took who? Ma'am, who are you talking about?" Her eye finally moved, locked onto mine, and I saw something in it that made my stomach drop. Not fear, not pain, guilt. "He took my baby," she whispered, and then her eye rolled back and she went limp. I hit my radio hard. "Dispatch, Charlie 7. I need a bus forthwith to my location. Female victim, unconscious, severe trauma to the head and face, possible internal injuries. Also requesting detectives and a supervisor to the scene. Possible child abduction." The next few minutes were chaos. The ambulance arrived first, then my backup, then a sergeant, then 2 detectives from the 7-3 squad. They took over the scene while the EMTs worked on the woman. I stood in the hallway writing down everything I'd seen, everything she'd said, while other officers started canvassing the building, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything. No one had, or no one was talking. In Brownsville, those two things look the same. One of the detectives, a guy named Maurice Quaid, older, gray beard, 25 years on the job, walked up to me while I was finishing my memo book entry. He had that look veteran detectives get, like they've seen it all twice and didn't like it the first time. "Officer Dwyer, right?" he said, voice gravelly, worn down by too many cigarettes and too many late nights. "Yeah. You're the one who found her? Yeah? She say anything else? Anything about the kid? Name, age, description?" I shook my head. Just that someone took her baby. Then she went unconscious. Quaid nodded slowly, looked back at the open apartment door, then back at me. "Kid's name is Lily Finch, 4 years old. We pulled a photo from the mother's wallet. Blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing pink pajamas. Mother's name is Eulalia Finch. No father listed on any paperwork we found. No other family contacts. Neighbors say they barely saw the kid, hardly heard her either. Said the mother kept to herself, didn't cause trouble. Until tonight," I said. "Until tonight," Quaid repeated. He handed me a photo, a crumpled Polaroid of a little girl with a gap-toothed smile sitting on someone's lap. The person's face was cut out of the frame. Just the girl, smiling like she didn't know the world could be cruel. "We're issuing an Amber Alert," Quaid continued. "Gonna need you to write up everything, every detail, no matter how small. You're the first officer on scene, which makes you a key witness if this goes to trial." "If," I said, looking up at him. Quaid didn't answer right away. He just stared at that hallway, that flickering light, and for a second I saw something in his face that looked like resignation, like he already knew how this was going to end. Most of these cases, Officer Dwyer, the kid's already gone before we even get the call. He walked away, leaving me standing there holding the photo of a little girl who might already be dead, and I felt something shift inside me, something that made me realize this wasn't just another call, another domestic, another night in Brownsville. This was different. This was going to stay with me. I didn't know it yet, but Maurice Quaid was right. And wrong. Lily Finch wasn't already gone. But by the time we found out what really happened to her, I'd wish she had been. The rest of that night blurred together in the way traumatic scenes always do. You remember fragments, snapshots, but not the connective tissue between them. I remember the crime scene unit arriving with their cameras and their evidence bags, the flash of the camera lighting up that sad little bedroom like lightning in a storm. I remember the building super showing up, a Dominican guy in his 60s who kept crossing himself and muttering prayers in Spanish. I remember the neighbors starting to gather in the hallway, some in robes and slippers, others fully dressed like they'd been waiting for an excuse to come outside. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had seen something, or heard something, or knew something. But when Quaid started asking direct questions, suddenly nobody knew anything at all. By the time my shift ended at 8 a.m., Eulalia Finch was in the ICU at Kings County Hospital with a fractured skull, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. She was stable but sedated, not talking. The Amber Alert went out at 4:37 a.m. with Lily's photo, description, and last known location. Tips started coming in immediately. A girl matching the description was seen at a bodega on Pitkin Avenue. Another sighting at a bus stop on Flatbush. A third at a McDonald's in Canarsie. All of them turned out to be nothing. Wrong kid, wrong age, wrong something. I went home to my studio in Crown Heights, sat on the edge of my bed still in uniform, and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. I couldn't shake the image of that woman's face, that one open eye staring at nothing, and the way her voice sounded when she said, "He took my baby." Not fear, not panic, guilt. Like she knew something, or had done something, and the worst part had already happened. I tried to sleep but couldn't. At noon, I gave up, took a shower, and headed back to the precinct. I wasn't scheduled to work, but I didn't care. I found Quaid at his desk in the detective squad room, hunched over a laptop, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Dwyer," he said without looking up. "Thought you were off." "I am. Couldn't sleep." He nodded like he understood. "Yeah, this one's a bad one. Any updates?" Quaid leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. "Mother's awake, still not talking much. Says she doesn't remember what happened. Says the last thing she remembers is putting Lily to bed around 9 p.m., then waking up in the hospital. No mention of an attacker, no description, no nothing." "You believe her?" Quaid shrugged. "Doesn't matter what I believe. Doctors say the head trauma could cause memory loss. Could be real, could be convenient. We're working both angles. What about the father?" "No father listed on the birth certificate. Neighbors say they never saw a man coming or going from the apartment. No boyfriends, no exes, nothing. Eulalia moved into that building about 18 months ago, kept to herself, paid rent on time, didn't cause problems. Before that, she was living in Flatbush, same story. Before that, we're still digging." I sat down on the edge of his desk. "So, what do we have?" Quaid pulled out a file, flipped it open. "Not much. No signs of forced entry besides the door you kicked in. No signs of struggle in the apartment except for the bedroom. Blood spatter analysis suggests Eulalia was beaten while lying down, not standing. Defensive wounds on her hands suggest she tried to fight back, but not very effectively. No weapon recovered. No prints that don't belong to Eulalia or the kid. No DNA besides theirs. Security cameras? Building doesn't have any. Nearest working camera is 2 blocks away at a check cashing place. We pulled the footage. Nothing useful. Too far. Too grainy. I stared at the file, the crime scene photos, the little girl's face smiling up at me from a Polaroid. What about the neighbor who called it in? Anonymous, burner phone. Called from outside the building, didn't leave a name. We tried tracing it, but the number's already dead. So, someone heard screaming, called it in, then disappeared. Looks that way. I leaned back, trying to piece it together. What if it wasn't a stranger? What if it was someone Eulalia knew? Someone who had access to the apartment? Someone Lily would go with without screaming? Quaid gave me a look. The kind detectives give patrol cops when they think they're stepping out of their lane. But he didn't shut me down. We're looking into that. Interviewing anyone who had contact with her. Co-workers, friends, family. So far, nothing. Woman was a ghost. Worked part-time at a laundromat on Atlantic. Paid cash for everything. Didn't have social media, didn't have close friends. It's like she was trying to stay invisible. People don't try to stay invisible unless they're hiding from something, I said. Quaid nodded. That's what I'm thinking. He closed the file, looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You did good last night, Dwyer. You got there fast. You secured the scene. You probably saved that woman's life. But this is a detective case now. You need to let us handle it." I stood up, nodded, but didn't say anything. Quaid was right. It wasn't my case. I was just a uniform, just a patrol cop who happened to be first on scene. But something about it wouldn't let go. Maybe it was the way Eulalia looked at me. Maybe it was the picture of Lily, that gap-toothed smile, that innocence. Or maybe it was something deeper, something I couldn't name yet but could feel crawling under my skin like an itch I couldn't scratch. I left the precinct and walked the 6 blocks back to Sutter Avenue. The building looked different in the daylight. Less menacing, more sad. Just another rundown tenement in a neighborhood full of them. The crime scene tape was still up on the 4th floor. I stood outside the building, staring up at the window of apartment 4D. And that's when I saw her. An older woman, maybe 70, standing on the stoop next door, watching me. She had a scarf tied around her head and a long coat, even though it wasn't that cold. She didn't look away when I made eye contact. Just stood there, staring, like she'd been waiting for me. I walked over. "Excuse me, ma'am, were you here last night?" She nodded slowly. "Did you see anything? Hear anything?" She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, then at the building, then back at me. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, careful, like she was choosing each word. "I heard the little girl crying 2 nights ago, not last night. 2 nights ago. She was crying and I almost called, but then it stopped. Did you see anyone go into the building? Anyone who didn't belong?" She shook her head. "No, but I saw her, the mother. She left that morning with a suitcase, came back an hour later without it." My pulse quickened. "You're sure?" She nodded. "I'm sure." I thanked her, got her name, address, and phone number, and told her a detective would be in touch. Then I called Quaid and told him what I'd found. He sighed, told me to write it up, and hung up. I stood there on Sutter Avenue, the wind picking up, the sun starting to dip lower in the sky, and I felt it again. That shift. That feeling that this wasn't just another case, another missing kid, another tragedy in a city full of them. This was something else. Something deeper. Something that was going to pull me in whether I wanted it to or not. And I was right. 3 days passed. No sign of Lily Finch. The Amber Alert was still active, plastered on every highway sign, every news broadcast, every social media feed. The tips kept coming, but they all led nowhere. A girl matching her description was spotted getting into a van in Queens. Turned out to be someone else's daughter on the way to dance class. Another sighting at JFK Airport. Wrong kid. Another at a rest stop in New Jersey. Wrong kid again. It's amazing how many blonde, 4-year-old girls disappear into the background noise of a city until you're actually looking for one. I couldn't let it go. Every shift, every patrol, I found myself driving past Sutter Avenue, slowing down in front of 1124, looking up at that 4th-floor window like I'd see something the crime scene unit missed. I started asking questions on my own time. Not official questions, not detective work, just a patrol cop talking to people who lived in the neighborhood. Shop owners, street vendors, the guy who ran the corner bodega where Eulalia sometimes bought groceries. Nobody knew much, or nobody wanted to say. On the 4th day, I got a call from Quaid. His voice on the phone sounded different, heavier, like he'd been awake for 72 hours straight. "Dwyer, you still interested in the Finch case?" "Yeah, why?" "Because we found the suitcase." My stomach dropped. "Where?" "Prospect Park. Jogger found it in the bushes near the ravine. Called it in this morning. We just finished processing it." "And?" There was a long pause. "You need to see this. Can you meet me at the 7-3 in an hour?" "I'm on my way." I didn't wait an hour. I was at the precinct in 20 minutes, still in uniform, badge clipped to my belt. Quaid met me in the squad room and led me to a back office where evidence was laid out on a table under fluorescent lights that made everything look pale and lifeless. The suitcase was small, black, wheeled, the kind you'd take on a weekend trip. It was dirty, covered in mud and leaves, one of the zippers broken. "This is it?" I asked. Quaid nodded. Neighbor's description matches. Black suitcase, silver handle, airline tag still attached. We ran the tag. It's registered to Eulalia Finch, flew into LaGuardia from Richmond, Virginia, about 2 years ago. What was inside? Quaid pulled on a pair of latex gloves and carefully opened the suitcase. Inside were clothes, women's clothes, a couple of shirts, jeans, underwear, socks. Nothing unusual at first glance. But then he reached into a side pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a plastic shopping bag. He unwrapped it slowly, deliberately, and placed it on the table. It was a birth certificate. Not Lily's. Someone else's. The name on it read Iris Lowell. Born March 14, 2019, in Richmond, Virginia. Mother's name, Eulalia Lowell. Father's name, blank. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Who the hell is Iris Lowell? Quaid looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something in his face that looked like fear. That's what we're trying to figure out, because according to this, Iris Lowell is 4 years old, same age as Lily Finch. The room went quiet. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint sound of someone typing on a keyboard in the next room. I picked up the birth certificate, studied it. It looked real. Official seal, embossed stamp, signatures. Not a forgery, or if it was a damn good one. "So, Eulalia had another kid?" I said, more to myself than to Quaid. "Or," Quaid said slowly, "Lily Finch isn't Lily Finch." I looked up at him. "What are you saying?" He pulled out another piece of paper from the suitcase. This one, a faded, creased document that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. It was a court order. Temporary custody agreement. Dated April 2021. It granted custody of Iris Lowell to the Virginia Department of Social Services due to unsafe living conditions and neglect. The mother's name, Eulalia Lowell. The child's name, Iris Lowell. She lost custody, I said. 2 years ago, Quaid confirmed. We reached out to Richmond PD and Virginia DSS. They confirmed it. Eulalia Lowell, formerly Eulalia Finch before she changed her name back to her maiden name, had a daughter named Iris. Child was removed from her care in April 2021 after neighbors reported the kid was being left alone for days at a time. No food, no supervision. Eulalia didn't fight it. Didn't show up to court, didn't appeal, just vanished. They flagged her in the system, but she was never located. Until now. I felt like the floor was tilting under me. So, the kid we're looking for, Lily, is actually Iris. Maybe. Or maybe Lily is a completely different kid and Iris is still missing. Or maybe Eulalia took Iris back and renamed her Lily to avoid detection. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that Eulalia Finch is not who she said she was, and the kid we're looking for might not be who we think she is either. I sat down hard in a chair, trying to process it all. What about the father? No father listed on the birth certificate. Same as Lily. We're running DNA on Eulalia to see if there's a match in any database, and we're reaching out to family members in Virginia. So far, nothing. Eulalia's parents are both deceased. No siblings, no close relatives anyone can find. So she's a ghost, I said. Seems like it. I stared at the birth certificate, the court order, the clothes in the suitcase, and I felt that itch again, that crawling sensation under my skin. Why would she pack a suitcase with this stuff and then dump it in a Prospect Park? Quaid shook his head. That's the question. Either she was planning to run and changed her mind, or she was trying to get rid of evidence. Either way, it tells us she knew something bad was coming. Or she was running from something, I said. Quaid looked at me. Or someone. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of it pressing down on both of us. Then Quaid's phone rang. He answered it, listened, his face going pale. He hung up and looked at me. That was the hospital. Eulalia just woke up, and she's asking for the cop who found her. The drive to Kings County Hospital took 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Quaid drove. I sat in the passenger seat watching Brooklyn roll by through the window. The streets were crowded. People going about their lives, unaware that somewhere in this city, a little girl was missing, and the only person who knew what happened to her was lying in a hospital bed with a fractured skull and a past she'd been trying to erase. We parked in the hospital garage and took the elevator to the ICU on the 4th floor. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and despair, the kind of place where people come to fight for their lives or say goodbye. Eulalia was in a private room at the end of the hall, a uniformed officer posted outside. He nodded at Quaid, stepped aside, and we went in. She looked smaller than I remembered. Fragile. The kind of fragile that makes you think a strong wind could blow her away. Her face was still swollen, bruised, stitches running across her forehead like train tracks. Her right eye was open, staring at the ceiling. The left was still swollen shut. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. A heart monitor beeped softly in the corner. She turned her head slowly when we walked in and her eye locked onto me. Recognition flickered across her face, then something else. Fear, maybe, or relief. Hard to tell. "Officer Dwyer," she said, her voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. I stepped closer to the bed. "Ms. Finch, how are you feeling?" She gave a weak, bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Like someone tried to kill me." Quaid stepped forward, pulled out his notebook. "Ms. Finch, I'm Detective Maurice Quaid. We need to ask you some questions about what happened, about your daughter." Her face tightened. Lily. Or Iris, Quaid said, watching her reaction. Her eye widened just for a second, and I saw it. Panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. She tried to sit up, winced, fell back against the pillows. Where did you hear that name? We found the suitcase, I said. In Prospect Park. We know about Virginia. We know about the custody case. We know you changed your name. She closed her eye, tears leaking out and running down her bruised cheek. You don't understand. Then help us understand, Quaid said, his voice firm but not unkind. Tell us what happened. Tell us where your daughter is. She shook her head, slowly, like it hurt to move. I can't. Can't or won't, Quaid pressed. Can't, she whispered. Because if I tell you, he'll find her. And if he finds her, she's dead. The room went cold. I glanced at Quaid, then back at Eulalia. Who's he? Who are you afraid of? She opened her eye, looked at me, and I saw something in that gaze that made my blood run cold. Not just fear, not just guilt. Something deeper, something primal. Her father, she said. Quaid leaned in. We need a name. We need a description. We need everything you can give us. Eulalia shook her head again. You won't find him, not in any database, not in any system. He doesn't exist. Not officially. Everyone exists, Quaid said. Everyone leaves a trail. Not him, she said, her voice breaking. He's careful, he's smart, and he's been looking for us for 2 years. I pulled up a chair, sat down next to the bed. Miss Finch, Eulalia, if your daughter is in danger, we need to know. We can protect her, we can protect you, but you have to tell us the truth. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face now, and for a long moment she didn't say anything. Then, finally, she spoke. His name is Thomas Greer. We met in Richmond 6 years ago. I was working at a diner, he was a regular. Charming, smart, handsome. Everything I thought I wanted. We moved in together after 3 months. I got pregnant a year later. He was happy at first, excited even. But after Iris was born, he changed, got paranoid, controlling, started accusing me of cheating, of trying to leave him, of poisoning Iris against him. He'd disappear for days, come back with cuts and bruises, wouldn't say where he'd been. Then one day, I found something in his truck. A bag. Inside were zip ties, duct tape, a knife, and a Polaroid camera. And photos. Photos of women. Women I didn't know. Women who looked terrified. She paused, swallowed hard, her breathing shallow. I confronted him. He laughed, said I was paranoid. Said the photos were from a job, something he was working on. But I didn't believe him. I couldn't. So I took Iris and left. Went to a shelter, filed for a restraining order. But he found us every time. Every shelter, every safe house, every friend's couch. He always found us. So I stopped trying to hide and just tried to survive. I started drinking. Using. I couldn't keep a job. Couldn't keep Iris safe. That's when DSS took her. And I thought, maybe that's better. Maybe if she's in the system, he can't find her. Maybe she'll be safe. But she wasn't, I said. Eulalia shook her head. No, because 6 months ago I got a message. Anonymous email. Just one line. I know where she is. And attached was a photo of Iris, recent photo, from her foster home. Quaid's jaw tightened. He had access to DSS files? I don't know how, Eulalia said. But he did. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to Virginia, broke into the foster home in the middle of the night, and took her. I changed her name, changed mine, moved to New York, and prayed he wouldn't find us again. But he did, I said. She nodded, fresh tears spilling. 3 nights ago, I came home and he was in the apartment, just sitting on the couch, waiting. He didn't say anything, didn't have to. I knew why he was there. I tried to fight him, tried to stop him, but he was too strong. He beat me until I couldn't move, and then he took her, took Lily, took Iris, took my baby, and I couldn't stop him. The room was silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Quaid was writing furiously in his notebook. I just sat there, staring at this woman who'd been running for 2 years, who'd lost her daughter twice, who'd done terrible things and desperate things just to keep her child alive. "Do you have a recent photo of Thomas Greer?" Quaid asked. She nodded toward the small table next to the bed. "In my purse. There's a photo. Old, but it's him." Quaid grabbed the purse, pulled out a worn, folded photograph. He unfolded it carefully and his face went pale. He showed it to me. The man in the photo was maybe 35, dark hair, clean-shaven, average build. Nothing about him stood out. He could have been anyone. A teacher, a mechanic, a neighbor. The kind of face that disappears in a crowd. Except for his eyes. Cold. Empty. The kind of eyes that looked through you, not at you. "We'll put out a bolo," Quaid said. "Get this to every precinct, every agency, every cop in the tri-state area. We'll find him." But Eulalia shook her head. "You won't. He's already gone, and he's got her. And by the time you figure out where he took her, it'll be too late." "Why?" I asked. "What's he going to do to her?" Eulalia closed her eye, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "The same thing he did to the women in those photos." I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't eat. Couldn't think about anything except that photo of Thomas Greer and the way Eulalia's voice sounded when she said, "The same thing he did to the women in those photos." I kept seeing Lily's face, that gap-toothed smile, those innocent blue eyes, and wondering if she was still alive, wondering if we were already too late. Quaid put out the bolo. Thomas Greer's photo went to every precinct in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. State police, transit police, Port Authority, everyone. FBI got involved because it crossed state lines. A task force was assembled. Press conferences were held. Eulalia's story made the news, carefully edited to protect the investigation. Mother beaten, child abducted by estranged father, armed and dangerous. Do not approach. But days passed, and nothing came back. No hits on facial recognition. No credit card usage. No cell phone pings. No sightings. Thomas Greer had vanished into thin air, and he'd taken Lily with him. I went back to work, back to patrol, back to the midnight tour in Sector Charlie 7, but my mind wasn't on the job. Every call felt like a distraction. Every domestic dispute, every noise complaint, every drunk and disorderly pulled me away from the only thing that mattered. Finding that little girl. On the 8th day, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I went back to Sutter Avenue, back to 1124, and I let myself into apartment 4D. The crime scene tape was still up, but the apartment was no longer an active scene. Evidence had been collected, photos had been taken, and the place was just sitting there, empty and hollow, waiting for someone to decide what to do with it. I stood in the living room, the same room where I'd first entered that night, and I tried to see it the way Thomas Greer had seen it. He'd been here. He'd sat on that couch, waited for Eulalia to come home, and then he'd done what he came to do. But why here? Why now? How did he find them? I walked through the apartment slowly, carefully, looking for anything the crime scene unit might have missed. The bedroom where I'd found Eulalia was stripped bare now, the mattress gone, the blood-stained pillow taken as evidence. The closet was half empty, clothes hanging crooked on wire hangers. A small dresser stood against the wall, drawers open, contents rifled through. I opened the top drawer. Women's underwear, socks, nothing unusual. Second drawer, t-shirts and sweats. Third drawer, junk drawer. Pens, rubber bands, loose change, expired coupons. And at the very back, under a stack of old receipts, a small notebook. I pulled it out, flipped it open. It was a journal, handwritten, pages filled with Eulalia's tight, cramped handwriting. Most of it was mundane. Grocery lists, appointments, reminders to pay rent. But toward the middle, the entries changed, got darker, more frantic. March 8th, saw a man outside the building today, dark jacket, watching. Could be nothing, could be him. March 12th, Lily asked about her daddy. I told her she doesn't have one. She cried. I hate lying to her. March 15, got a phone call. No one spoke, just breathing. He knows. He knows where we are. March 18th, I need to move again. But where? Where can I go that he won't find us? The last entry was dated March 20th, 3 days before I'd found her. March 20th, he's here. I saw him at the bodega. He smiled at me. Just stood there and smiled like he knew exactly what he was going to do. I have to get Lily out. I have to hide her. I have to... The entry stopped mid-sentence, unfinished, like she'd been interrupted or had given up. I stared at those words, my heart pounding. I have to hide her. Not I have to run. Not I have to call the police. Hide her. Like she knew running wouldn't work anymore. Like she was out of options. I pocketed the journal, closed the drawer, and left the apartment. I should have logged it as evidence. Should have called Quaid. But I didn't. Because something about that journal felt personal. Like Eulalia had written it for someone to find, and that someone was me. I spent the next 2 days reading that journal cover to cover. Every word, every margin note, every crossed-out line. And slowly, a picture started to form. Eulalia wasn't just running from Thomas Greer. She was running from something bigger. Something she couldn't name but could feel closing in around her. There were references to people I didn't recognize. A Pastor Lowell in Richmond who'd tried to help her but couldn't. A woman named M who'd let her stay in a motel for 2 weeks before Thomas found them. A lawyer in Virginia who'd filed the restraining order but told her it was useless without proof. But one name kept coming up over and over in the margins, circled and underlined. Ridgewood. At first, I thought it was a person. Then, I thought it was a place. Finally, on the third read-through, I found the context. A single entry from 6 months ago, right after she'd taken Lily from the foster home. June 14th. Called the number M gave me. Man answered, said he could help. Said to meet him at the Ridgewood Diner in Queens. Said he knew about Thomas. Said he had proof, that was it. No follow-up, no explanation. Just that one entry, and then nothing. Like whatever happened at that meeting had scared her enough to stop writing about it. I pulled up a map on my phone. Ridgewood Diner. There were 3 diners in Ridgewood, Queens. I called each one, asked if they remembered a woman matching Eulalia's description coming in 6 months ago. 2 said no. The third, a guy named Tony, who sounded like he'd been working there since the Nixon administration, paused. Maybe, he said. We get a lot of people, but if she met someone here, I might remember. What'd the guy look like? I don't know, I admitted. But he might have had information about a criminal case. Might have been a cop, a PI, something like that. Tony was quiet for a moment. Then, there was a guy. Older fella, 60s maybe, gray hair, always wore a suit. Used to come in once a week, sit in the back booth, drink coffee, read the paper. Stopped coming around the time you're talking about. Might be nothing, might be something. You remember his name? Nah, but he paid with a card sometimes. Let me check the old receipts. Hang on. I heard rustling, the sound of papers being shuffled, drawers opening and closing. Then Tony came back on the line. Got it. Name on the card was Maurice Quaid. The world stopped. My breath caught in my throat. Say that again. Maurice Quaid. That's what the receipt says. You know him? I did. I knew him very well. Because Maurice Quaid was the detective handling Lily Finch's case. The same detective who'd been at the scene the night I found Eulalia. The same detective who'd told me to step back, let him handle it, trust the system. Maurice Quaid had met with Eulalia 6 months before her daughter was abducted, and he'd never mentioned it. I didn't confront Quaid right away. I couldn't. Not until I knew more. So I did what any good cop does when they don't trust the system. I went off the books. I pulled Quaid's personnel file, something I technically wasn't supposed to have access to, but managed to get anyway through a buddy in HR who owed me a favor. Maurice Quaid, 58 years old, 25 years on the job, clean record, solid detective, respected by his peers. Married, 2 kids, both grown, living upstate. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that screamed dirty cop. But then I dug deeper. I pulled his old case files, the ones from before he made detective, back when he was still in uniform, working patrol in Brooklyn, and I found something. A case from 1998. Domestic violence call, same neighborhood as Eulalia's apartment, same kind of situation. Woman beaten, child missing, suspect fled the scene. Responding officer, patrolman Maurice Quaid. The case had gone cold. The kid was never found. The mother died 2 weeks later from complications related to her injuries. The suspect was never identified. Just a generic description. White male, 30s, average build. Could have been anyone. I pulled the crime scene photos from the archived file. The apartment looked almost identical to Eulalia's. Same layout, same damage, same sense of violence and desperation. And on the coffee table, barely visible in one of the photos, was a small black notebook. I zoomed in on the photo, enhanced it as much as I could. The handwriting was faint, but I could make out a few words. He's coming, I have to hide her, Ridgewood. The same words, the same place, 25 years apart. My hands were shaking. I printed the photo, tucked it into my jacket, and drove straight to Kings County Hospital. Eulalia was awake, sitting up in bed, staring at the TV mounted on the wall. She looked better. Still bruised, still fragile, but stronger. Like maybe she'd decided to fight instead of give up. Ms. Finch, I said, stepping into the room. I need to ask you something. She looked at me, wary. What? I pulled out the journal, showed it to her. You wrote about meeting someone at the Ridgewood Diner. Someone who said he had proof about Thomas Greer. Who was he? Her face went pale. How did you get that? Found it in your apartment. Who was he, Eulalia? She looked away, her jaw tight. I don't know his name. He called himself a friend. Said he'd been tracking Thomas for years. Said Thomas had done this before to other women, other kids. Said he had evidence but couldn't go to the police because he didn't know who to trust. Why not? Because, she said, her voice dropping, he said there were cops involved. Cops who knew what Thomas was doing and let him get away with it. The room tilted. Did he give you names? She shook her head. No, he just said to be careful. Said if I went to the police, Thomas would know. Said the only way to keep Lily safe was to disappear completely. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't live like that anymore. So I stayed. And he found us anyway. I showed her the archived photo, the one from 1998. Have you ever seen this before? She took it, studied it, her face crumpling. Oh my God. What? That's my mother's apartment, in Brooklyn. I was 7 years old when she died. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Your mother? Eulalia nodded, tears streaming down her face. She was killed, beaten to death by a man she'd been seeing, a man I only met once, a man who told me to call him Uncle Thomas. Everything clicked into place. The journal, the case from 1998, the connection to Quaid. Thomas Greer hadn't just found Eulalia by accident. He'd been there her whole life, lurking in the background, watching, waiting. And Maurice Quaid had been there too, the responding officer who'd never solved the case, who'd let Thomas Greer slip through the cracks, who'd maybe, just maybe, helped him do it. I stood there in that hospital room, holding a photo of a crime scene from 25 years ago, and I realized the truth. This wasn't just about a missing child. This was about a predator who'd been operating for decades, protected by someone in the system, someone who had the power to make evidence disappear, to steer investigations away from the truth, to keep Thomas Greer in the shadows. And that someone was Maurice Quaid. I didn't tell Eulalia, didn't tell anyone. I just thanked her, left the hospital, and sat in my patrol car in the parking lot trying to figure out what to do. If I went to my sergeant, would he believe me? If I went to internal affairs, would they investigate? Or would they bury it? If I confronted Quaid directly, would he come clean? Or would he make me disappear like he'd made evidence disappear? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. If I wanted to find Lily, if I wanted to stop Thomas Greer, I was going to have to do it alone. I started by pulling every case Maurice Quaid had worked in the last 25 years. Every missing person, every domestic violence call, every unsolved abduction. I cross-referenced them with the timeline of Thomas Greer's known movements, the places Eulalia said he'd been, the gaps in his history. And slowly a pattern emerged. Every 2 to 3 years, a woman would go missing. Sometimes with a child, sometimes alone. Always the same profile. Single mother, isolated, no family, no support system. And every time, Maurice Quaid was somehow connected. Either he was the responding officer, or he was the detective assigned to the case, or he was the one who closed it as unsolved. 12 cases, 12 women, 12 kids, all gone, all cold. I printed everything, compiled it into a file, and then I did something that could have ended my career. I went to the FBI. The agent who met me was a woman in her 40s named Special Agent Rebecca Travers. She listened to my story without interrupting, looked at my evidence without flinching, and when I was done, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You realize what you're accusing a decorated NYPD detective of?" "Yes," I said. "And you have no physical evidence, no witness testimony, just patterns and coincidences." "I have Eulalia Finch. She can testify." "She's a woman with a history of drug use, mental health issues, and a kidnapping charge in Virginia. Any defense attorney would tear her apart on the stand." "So, what do I do?" I asked, frustration boiling over. "Just let Thomas Greer keep taking kids? Let Maurice Quaid keep covering for him?" Travers stared at me for a long moment, then opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a file. She slid it across the table. "This is a federal case we've been building for the last 3 years. Human trafficking, child abduction, conspiracy. We've been tracking a network of individuals who facilitate the movement of children across state lines for purposes I don't need to explain. We've identified several suspects, but we haven't been able to connect them to a larger operation. Until now." I opened the file. Inside were surveillance photos, phone records, financial transactions, and in the middle of it all, a photo of Maurice Quaid shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The date on the photo, 6 months ago. The location, Ridgewood, Queens. Travers leaned forward. We've been watching Detective Quaid for 2 years. We think he's a facilitator. He identifies vulnerable women and children, feeds information to the network, and helps cover up the disappearances. But we haven't had enough evidence to move on him, until you walked in today. I felt my heart racing. So, what now? Now, Travers said, you help us bring him down. The plan was simple. I would continue working the Lily Finch case as if nothing had changed. I would stay close to Quaid, feed him information, make him think I trusted him. And all the while, I'd be wearing a wire, recording every conversation, every slip-up, every piece of evidence that could tie him to Thomas Greer and the missing children. It was dangerous. If Quaid found out, I was dead. If Thomas Greer found out, Lily was dead. But it was the only way. For the next week, I played the role of the loyal patrol cop. I checked in with Quaid daily, asked for updates, offered to help with canvassing, with interviews, with anything that would keep me close. And slowly, carefully, I started planting seeds of doubt. You know, I said one afternoon, sitting across from him in the precinct break room, I've been thinking about that suitcase we found. How did Thomas know Eulalia had packed it? How did he know where to find it? Quaid looked up from his coffee. What are you getting at? Just seems like he knew a lot, knew where she lived, knew her routine, knew she was planning to run. Almost like someone was feeding him information. Quaid's eyes narrowed. You think there's a leak? I shrugged. I don't know. Just seems weird, that's all. He didn't say anything, just stared at me, and for a moment I thought he knew. Thought the wire taped to my chest was going to be the last mistake I ever made. But then he looked away, took a sip of his coffee and said, I'll look into it. That night, Travers called me. We got it. His reaction, the way he deflected, the pause before he answered. That's consciousness of guilt. We're moving on him tomorrow. What about Lily? I asked. What about the other kids? We're working on it, she said. We've got surveillance on Quaid's known associates, including a property in upstate New York we think might be a holding site. If Lily's still alive, we'll find her. And if she's not... Travers was quiet for a moment. Then we make sure no one else's daughter ends up like her. The next morning, I reported for my shift like normal. Rolled call, grabbed my sector assignment, hit the street. But at 10 a.m., my radio crackled. All units, be advised. Detective Maurice Quaid, 7-3 Squad, wanted for questioning in connection with federal charges. Consider armed and dangerous. Do not approach. Notify supervisor immediately if located. The precinct erupted. Cops I'd worked with for years stood in stunned silence, unable to process that one of their own, a decorated detective, a 25-year veteran, was dirty. But I wasn't surprised. I was just hoping it wasn't too late. They found Maurice Quaid 3 hours later. Not running, not hiding, just sitting in his car in a Walmart parking lot in Yonkers, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, waiting. When the FBI and NYPD tactical team surrounded him, he didn't resist, didn't say a word, just stepped out of the vehicle with his hands up and let them cuff him. I wasn't there when they arrested him. I was still on patrol, listening to the whole thing unfold over the radio, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Relief that we'd stopped him, dread that we still didn't know where Lily was. Travers called me an hour later. He's not talking, lawyered up immediately, but we executed search warrants on his home, his storage unit, and his vehicle. We found files, lots of files, names, addresses, photos. Most of them match the missing persons cases you flagged. We also found financial records showing payments to an LLC registered in upstate New York. Property records show the LLC owns a farm outside a town called Millerton, about 2 hours north of the city. We're heading there now. I want you to come with us." "Why me?" "Because if Lily's there, she's going to be terrified. She needs to see a familiar face. Someone who was there the night her mother was hurt. Someone she might trust." I didn't argue. I grabbed my gear, told my sergeant I was being pulled for a federal investigation, and met Travers and her team at a staging area just outside Millerton. It was late afternoon by the time we arrived, the sun already starting to dip below the tree line, casting long shadows across the rural highway. The farm was at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by thick woods and overgrown fields. A rusted mailbox leaned at an angle near the entrance. No name on it, just a faded number, 447. The house itself was a 2-story colonial that had seen better days. Paint peeling, shutters hanging crooked, porch sagging under its own weight. Behind it stood a large barn, its roof partially caved in, and beyond that, several smaller outbuildings in various states of collapse. Travers gave the tactical team the signal. They moved in fast, breaching the front door with a battering ram, flooding the house with agents in body armor, rifles up, voices shouting, "FBI, search warrant, show me your hands." I stayed back with Travers, watching through the open door as agents cleared room after room. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, all empty, no one home. No signs of recent activity, just dust and cobwebs and the smell of mildew. But then one of the agents called out from upstairs. "We've got something." Travers and I went up, boots heavy on the creaking stairs. The agent was standing in a small bedroom at the end of the hall, shining his flashlight on the wall. The room was bare except for a single mattress on the floor and a metal folding chair in the corner. But the walls were covered in writing. Hundreds of lines, scrawled in black marker, repeated over and over in different handwriting, different sizes, different levels of desperation. "Please let me go. I want my mommy. I'll be good. Don't hurt me. Help." My stomach turned. Travers stepped forward, her face hard, emotionless, the way you have to be when you're staring at proof that monsters are real. She pulled out her phone, started taking photos. "This is a holding room. He kept them here. Probably multiple kids, multiple times. Based on the handwriting, I'd say at least a dozen." "Where are they now?" I asked, my voice tight. "That's what we need to find out." We moved through the rest of the house, found more rooms, more mattresses, more evidence of children being held against their will, but no children. No Lily, no bodies, just emptiness and the ghosts of voices that had stopped screaming a long time ago. Outside, agents were searching the barn and the outbuildings. I followed Travers across the overgrown yard, the grass reaching up to my knees, insects buzzing in the fading light. The barn door was open, hanging on one hinge, and inside it was dark, cavernous. The smell of rot and decay so thick I had to breathe through my mouth. "Over here," one of the agents called. We moved toward the back of the barn, where a section of the floor had been pulled up, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Travers pulled out a flashlight, aimed it into the hole. The beam cut through the black, illuminating stone walls, a dirt floor, and at the bottom, a heavy wooden door with a padlock. "Basement," Travers said, "or a cellar. Either way, we're going down." The tactical team went first, weapons drawn, moving carefully down the stairs. I followed, my hand on my service weapon, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The air got colder the deeper we went, damp and stale, like a tomb. At the bottom, the lead agent cut the padlock with bolt cutters and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not death. Something worse. Chemicals, bleach, the kind of smell that comes from someone trying very hard to erase evidence. The room beyond was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. walls lined with metal shelving units. On the shelves were plastic bins, dozens of them, all labeled with dates. The agents started pulling them down, opening them, and inside were clothes. Children's clothes, shoes, toys, personal items. Each bin represented a different child, and in the back of the room, propped against the wall, was a Polaroid camera. Travers opened one of the bins, pulled out a small pink dress, and checked the label. March 2023. She opened another. June 2021. Another. October 2019. She looked at me, her face pale. These go back years. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was seeing. All those kids, all those families, all those lives destroyed, and Maurice Quaid had helped make it happen. But Lily wasn't here. None of the bins were recent enough. The most recent was from 8 months ago. They moved locations, Travers said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. He knew we were getting close, so he moved them somewhere else. Where? I demanded. Where the hell would he take them? Before she could answer, her phone rang. She answered, listened, her face hardening with each passing second. When she hung up, she looked at me. Quaid's talking. He's offering a deal. He'll give us Thomas Greer's location in exchange for a reduced sentence. What did he say? He said Greer moves the kids every few months, never stays in one place long, but he has a pattern. Always near water. Always isolated. And always within a 2-hour drive of New York City. I pulled out my phone, opened a map app, started marking locations that fit the description. Lakes, rivers, reservoirs. There were dozens of them, too many to search in time. But then I remembered something Eulalia had said. Something about Lily asking about her father. Something about water. I called the hospital, got transferred to Eulalia's room. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy, drugged. Ms. Finch, it's Officer Dwyer. I need you to think. Did Thomas ever take you or Iris anywhere specific? Anywhere near water? A lake, a cabin, anything? There was a long pause, then quietly. Candlewood Lake, in Connecticut. He had a friend who owned a cabin there. We went once, before everything went bad. Iris loved it. She kept asking to go back, but we never did. I hung up, looked at Travers. Candlewood Lake, Connecticut. She was already on the radio, coordinating with Connecticut State Police, mobilizing units, calling for backup. Within 20 minutes, we were on the road, lights flashing, sirens blaring, racing north into the dying light. Candlewood Lake is the largest lake in Connecticut, stretching for miles along the western part of the state. There are hundreds of cabins along its shores, most of them vacation rentals, most of them empty this time of year. Finding one specific cabin without an address was like finding a needle in a haystack. But Quaid had given us one more piece of information. The cabin was registered under a shell company, same as the farm. And that shell company had a P.O. box in a town called New Fairfield. Local police ran the records, cross-referenced property owners, and found a match. A cabin on the North Shore, isolated, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through dense forest. We arrived just after dark. No lights on in the cabin, no vehicles in the driveway, no signs of life. But the door was unlocked. Travers and the tactical team went in first. I stayed outside, weapon drawn, watching the tree line, waiting for someone to run, someone to shoot, something to happen. But nothing did. The cabin was silent. After what felt like an eternity, Travers appeared in the doorway, her face unreadable. Dwyer, you need to see this. I went inside. The cabin was small. One main room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a loft upstairs. Furnished like a hunting lodge. Rustic furniture, animal heads mounted on the walls, a stone fireplace, and in the center of the room, on a folding table, was a laptop, open, screen still glowing. Travers gestured to it. He left it on, intentionally, I think, like he wanted us to find it. I looked at the screen. It was an email, already typed, unsent, sitting in the drafts folder. The subject line read, "For Officer Dwyer." I felt my blood run cold. I clicked it open, and the message loaded. "Officer Dwyer, by the time you read this, I'll be long gone. You won't find me. You won't find the children. You won't find anything but questions and ghosts. I want you to know something. Maurice didn't protect me because he was dirty. He protected me because he understood. He understood that some people are born broken, that some desires can't be fixed, can't be cured, can't be locked away. He understood that the world needs people like me, people who take the children no one will miss. The children society has already forgotten. Lily is safe. For now, she's with others like her, children who will grow up knowing only what I teach them. They'll never go back to the world that failed them. They'll never know the pain of abandonment, of neglect, of being unwanted. You think you're saving them, but you're not. You're condemning them to a life of foster homes and broken promises and empty beds. I'm giving them structure, purpose, family. You'll keep looking, you'll keep trying, but you'll never find us, because we're everywhere and nowhere. And every time you see a missing child poster, every time you get a call about a kidnapping, you'll wonder, is it me, or is it someone else? Sleep well, Officer Dwyer. TG. I read it twice, 3 times. My hands were shaking. Travers was saying something, but I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, the rush of blood in my ears, the weight of those words pressing down on me like a stone. Dwyer. Travers grabbed my shoulder, forced me to look at her. We'll find him. We'll find Lily. This isn't over. But I knew she was wrong. I knew that Thomas Greer was gone, that Lily was gone, that all those children were gone, swallowed up by a darkness we couldn't reach. We searched the cabin top to bottom. Found nothing. No evidence. No fingerprints. No DNA. Just that email and the cold, empty silence of a place where terrible things had happened and no one would ever know. Maurice Quaid took a plea deal. 20 years in federal prison in exchange for his testimony against the network. He gave us names, locations, details, led us to 3 more properties, 2 in Pennsylvania, 1 in upstate New York. We found evidence. We found proof. But we didn't find any children. Eulalia Finch was released from the hospital 2 weeks later. She went back to Virginia, back to nothing, back to a life without her daughter. I visited her once before she left. Asked her if she wanted to stay in New York, if there was anything I could do. She just looked at me with those hollow eyes and said, "There's nothing left to do." I still work patrol in Brownsville. Still drive past 1124 Sutter Avenue on my shifts. The building's been condemned now, scheduled for demolition. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can see a light in the window of apartment 4D. Just for a second. Just long enough to remind me. I keep Lily's photo in my locker. That gap-toothed smile, those innocent blue eyes. I look at it every day before my shift. And I wonder, is she still alive? Is she safe? Is she happy? Or is she just another ghost in a city full of them? The FBI is still looking. Travers calls me once a month with updates. Tips that go nowhere. Sightings that turn out to be false. A network that's always one step ahead, always just out of reach. Thomas Greer is still out there. So is Lily. So are all the others. And every time I respond to a domestic call, every time I find a woman beaten and a child missing, I think of that email. I think of those words. We're everywhere and nowhere. And I know he's right. I became a cop to help people, to protect them, to make sure the badge meant something. But some nights, when I'm sitting in my patrol car at 3 a.m., watching the city sleep, I wonder if it means anything at all. Because the monsters aren't just in the shadows. Sometimes they're in the system. Sometimes they wear badges. Sometimes they smile at you and shake your hand, and then go home and help destroy lives. And the worst part, you never know until it's too late. I still drive past that building. Still look up at that window. And sometimes I swear I can hear it. A child crying, soft, distant, fading. But when I get out of the car and listen, there's nothing but silence. Just silence and the wind, and the weight of knowing that somewhere out there, a little girl is calling for help. And no one's coming. I joined the NYPD Narcotics Division when I was 26 years old, 3 years after finishing my patrol rotation in the 4-1 precinct. My name is Ruben Castaigne, and for the past 8 years, I've been working buy and bust operations in the South Bronx, one of the busiest drug corridors in New York City. It's not glamorous work. It's not the kind of thing they make TV shows about. It's surveillance, informants, paperwork, and long nights sitting in unmarked cars watching corners where kids who should be in school are slinging dime bags to finance someone else's empire. The Bronx is different from the rest of the city. It's grittier, louder, more desperate. The buildings lean in close like they're trying to hear your secrets. The streets remember everything. Every shooting, every overdose, every arrest. And everyone knows everyone, which makes working narcotics both easier and infinitely more dangerous. You can't blend in. People know you're a cop the second you step out of your car. They can smell it. My partner, Vince Ardell, had been in narcotics for 12 years. He was old school, the kind of cop who remembered when the South Bronx was a war zone and crack was everywhere. He taught me everything I know, how to flip an informant, how to spot a stash house from 3 blocks away, how to survive in a world where everyone wants you dead or bought. Vince was a good cop, or at least I thought he was. It was early November when things started to unravel. We were working a case on a crew operating out of a bodega on Westchester Avenue. Small-time operation, heroin and fentanyl, moving maybe 2 kilos a week. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to kill people. We'd been watching them for 6 weeks, building a case, identifying the key players. The kingpin was a guy named Rafael Rafi Soto. Mid-30s, cautious, smart. He never touched the product himself, never made the hand-to-hands, always had 3 layers of insulation between him and the street. But we had an informant. Her name was Lydia Maris. Mid-20s, former addict, cleaned up after her brother overdosed on a bad batch of fentanyl. She'd been dating one of Rafi's lieutenants, a guy named Ernesto, and she had access to the inner circle. She agreed to work with us in exchange for immunity on an old possession charge and enough money to get out of the Bronx and start over somewhere clean. Lydia was good. She was careful, she knew the risks, and she trusted me, which in that world is worth more than gold. We'd meet twice a week in different locations, always switching it up, always making sure no one was following. She'd give me names, addresses, delivery schedules, everything we needed to bring Rafi's operation down. On November 12th, we planned the bust. The intel from Lydia said Rafi was expecting a shipment that night. 2 kilos of pure heroin coming up from Baltimore, arriving around midnight at a warehouse on Bruckner Boulevard. We assembled a team. 8 officers, 2 sergeants, tactical unit on standby. Vince and I were the lead investigators, which meant we'd be first through the door. The night was cold, that kind of biting November wind that cuts through your jacket and makes your fingers stiff. We staged 3 blocks away, sitting in unmarked vans, waiting for the signal. Lydia had texted me an hour earlier. "They're there." 3 cars. Rafi's inside. Be careful. At 11:47 p.m., we moved. Tactical team breached the front entrance. We came in through the side. Flashlights, shouting. The controlled chaos of a raid. The warehouse was dark, cavernous, filled with abandoned machinery and old shipping containers. And it was empty. No one. No drugs. No cars. Nothing. We searched every inch of that warehouse. Found nothing but dust and rat droppings. Vince stood in the middle of the empty space, hands on his hips, face hard. We got burned. Lydia wouldn't burn us, I said. But even as I said it, I felt doubt creeping in. Then someone tipped them off, Vince said, his voice tight. Someone knew we were coming. We drove back to the precinct in silence. I tried calling Lydia. No answer. Texted her. Nothing. By the time we got back, it was past 1 a.m., and the sergeant was waiting for us, pissed. 8 officers, tactical team, resources, time, all for nothing. He wanted answers. We didn't have any. I went home that night with a sick feeling in my gut. Something was wrong. Lydia wouldn't just disappear. She was too careful. And that warehouse wasn't just empty. It was clean. Like someone had swept it, scrubbed it, made sure there was no evidence left behind. The next morning, I got the call. Lydia Maris was dead. Found in an alley off 149th Street. 2 bullets to the back of the head. Execution style. No witnesses. No suspects. Just another body in a city full of them. I stood over Lydia's body in the medical examiner's office, staring at the sheet that covered her from the neck down, at the pale, lifeless face that just 48 hours ago had been texting me intel. The ME said time of death was approximately 2 a.m., which meant she'd been killed within an hour of our failed raid. That wasn't a coincidence. Vince stood next to me, arms crossed, face expressionless. She got sloppy. Someone in Rafi's crew figured out she was talking. She wasn't sloppy, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She was careful. She knew what she was doing. Then how'd they find out? I didn't answer because I didn't know, but I knew one thing. Lydia had been killed because of that raid, because someone had told Rafi we were coming, and that someone had to be a cop. We went back to the precinct. I pulled the operation logs, checked who had access to the case file, who knew the timing of the raid, who'd been in the briefing. 12 people total. 8 officers, 2 sergeants, me, and Vince. Any one of them could have leaked it. I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. I pulled phone records, reviewed body camera footage, checked financial records, nothing obvious, but then I noticed something. 2 days before the raid, Vince had made a phone call. It lasted 4 minutes. The number wasn't in any of our databases, wasn't registered to anyone in the NYPD, wasn't listed anywhere I could find. Just a burner phone. I ran it through an analyst I knew in intelligence. She came back with a hit. The number had been used to call several known associates of Rafael Soto in the past 6 months, including Ernesto, Lydia's ex-boyfriend. My blood ran cold. Vince had called someone in Rafi's crew 2 days before the raid. The same raid that ended with Lydia dead. I didn't confront him, not yet. I couldn't. If Vince was dirty, and I tipped him off that I knew, I was dead, so I kept quiet. Kept working. Kept pretending everything was normal. But inside I was screaming. The next few days were torture. I worked alongside Vince like nothing had changed. But every word he said, every move he made, I was analyzing, dissecting, looking for proof. I started carrying a second phone, recording our conversations, documenting everything. I didn't know who to trust. If Vince was dirty, who else was? The sergeants, the other officers. How deep did this go? On the 5th day after Lydia's death, Vince suggested we meet for a drink after shift. A bar in Hunts Point, out of the way, not the kind of place cops usually go. I said yes, even though every instinct in my body was screaming to say no. The bar was dark, half empty, the kind of place where people go to disappear. Vince ordered a whiskey. I ordered a beer I didn't plan on drinking. We sat in a booth in the back, and for a while, neither of us said anything. Then Vince leaned forward, his voice low. "You've been acting different, Reuben. Distant. You got something you want to say to me?" I met his eyes. Saw nothing there. No guilt, no fear, just a flat, cold stare. "Lydia's dead. Our informant got executed. I'm trying to figure out how." "We all are," Vince said. "That's the job. People die. Informants get burned. It happens." "Not like this," I said. "Not this clean. Someone tipped Raffi off. Someone in our department." Vince took a slow sip of his whiskey, watching me over the rim of the glass. "That's a serious accusation." "I know. You got proof?" "Not yet." He set the glass down, leaned back. "Then maybe you should stop digging, for your own good." The words hung in the air like a threat. I felt my hand drift toward my waistband, toward the off-duty weapon I always carried. Vince noticed. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Relax, Reuben. I'm not the enemy here. But you're playing a dangerous game. If you start accusing cops of being dirty without proof, you're going to end up like Lydia, another body in an alley." I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked out without another word. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there for 10 minutes trying to calm down. Vince knew. He knew I was onto him, and he'd just threatened me. I drove home, checked over my shoulder every 30 seconds, convinced I was being followed. Made it to my apartment in Parkchester, locked the door, pulled the blinds. I sat on my couch in the dark, service weapon on the coffee table, and tried to figure out what to do. If I went to internal affairs, would they believe me? Or would Vince find out and disappear me before I could testify? If I went to the FBI, would they even care? Dirty cops are NYPD's problem, not theirs. And if I went to my sergeant, what if he was in on it too? I was trapped, isolated, alone in a department full of people who might want me dead. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Officer Castaigne," a woman's voice, young, scared. "Who is this?" "My name is Maria Soto. I'm Rafael Soto's sister, and I need your help." I met Maria the next night in a parking lot behind a closed laundromat in Soundview. She told me to come alone, no wire, no backup. I didn't follow those instructions. I wore a wire taped to my chest and had my weapon in a shoulder holster under my jacket. If this was a setup, I wasn't going down without a fight. She was waiting for me, sitting on the hood of a beat-up Honda Civic, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. Early 20s, dark hair, tired eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You're alone?" she asked as I approached. "Yeah," I lied. She nodded, slid off the hood. "I know what you're looking for. I know who killed Lydia." My pulse quickened. "Who?" "My brother didn't order it. He wanted her alive. Wanted to figure out what she'd told you, how much damage she'd done. But someone else gave the order. Someone who didn't want her talking." "Who?" I repeated, harder this time. Maria looked at me, fear in her eyes. "Your partner, Vince Ardell." The world tilted. I knew it. I'd suspected it. But hearing it out loud, confirmed by someone on the inside, made it real in a way that was almost unbearable. "How do you know?" I asked. Because I was there, Maria said, her voice breaking. I was at the warehouse that night. I heard Vince on the phone with my brother. He told him you were coming, gave him the exact time, the exact location, and then, after the raid, Vince called again. Said Lydia was a problem. Said she needed to be dealt with. Why are you telling me this? Maria's eyes filled with tears. Because I'm tired of this. Tired of the drugs, the killing, the blood. My brother's going to end up dead or in prison, and I don't want to be there when it happens. But if I testify, if I go to the police, I'm dead. The only way I survive this is if you take Vince down first. Because if he's still out there, no one's safe. I stared at her, weighing my options. She could be lying. This could be a setup. But something in her voice and the way her hands shook told me she was telling the truth. I need proof, I said. Something I can take to IAB. Something solid. Maria reached into her jacket, pulled out a phone. This is Ernesto's phone, Lydia's ex. He's dead now, killed 2 days ago in a drive-by. But before he died, he was texting with Vince, setting up meets, coordinating deals. Everything's on here. She handed me the phone. I scrolled through Haas messages. My stomach dropped. It was all there. Vince coordinating with Ernesto, warning him about raids, giving him intelligence, taking payments in the form of wire transfers to offshore accounts. Months of communication. Proof of corruption so blatant, so damning, there was no way to deny it. Why haven't you turned this in yourself? I asked. Because I'm not a cop, Maria said. I'm the sister of a drug dealer. No one's going to believe me. But you? You're one of them. They'll listen to you. She was right. I took the phone, pocketed it. I'll take care of this. But you need to disappear, tonight. Get out of the Bronx, get out of New York. If Vince finds out you talked to me, you're dead. Maria nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. She got back in her car and drove off into the night. I stood there in that parking lot, holding a dead man's phone, knowing that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. I had the proof. Now, I just had to survive long enough to use it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with Ernesto's phone in front of me, scrolling through months of messages between him and Vince. The more I read, the sicker I felt. This wasn't just a cop taking a payoff here and there. This was systematic corruption. Vince had been feeding intelligence to Rafael Soto's crew for at least 2 years, maybe longer. He'd warned them about raids, identified undercover officers, even helped them move product when heat was coming down from other agencies. And Lydia. The messages confirmed it. 2 hours after our failed raid, Vince had texted Ernesto. Problem solved, she won't talk. 3 hours later, Lydia was dead in an alley. I wanted to throw up, I wanted to scream, but mostly, I wanted to make sure Vince paid for what he'd done. The question was how. If I walked into the precinct tomorrow and handed this phone to my sergeant, there was a good chance it would disappear. If my sergeant was clean, Vince would find out within hours and I'd be next. If my sergeant was dirty too, I'd hand him the evidence of my own death warrant. The only option was internal affairs. But IAB had a reputation. They moved slow, investigated everything, and leaked like a sieve. If I went to them, word would get back to Vince before they could protect me. Unless I found someone I could trust. Someone with a reputation for being clean, for not playing politics, for actually giving a damn about dirty cops. I made some calls, talked to a few people I trusted, people who'd been around long enough to know who was who in the department. One name kept coming up. Lieutenant Sarah Kellerman, IAB, Brooklyn South. 22 years on the job, former narcotics herself, known for being ruthless with corruption cases. She'd taken down 3 cops in the past 5 years, all of them dirty, all of them sent to prison. At 6 a.m., I drove to Brooklyn. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't bring my work phone. Just me, Ernesto's phone, and my service weapon. I found Kellerman's office in a nondescript building in downtown Brooklyn, 4th floor. No sign on the door. Just a number. 412. I knocked, a voice from inside, sharp and authoritative. "Come in." Lieutenant Sarah Kellerman was in her late 40s, short gray hair, sharp eyes that looked like they could see through walls. She was sitting behind a desk covered in case files, a cup of coffee steaming next to her keyboard. She looked up at me, assessed me in about 3 seconds, and said, "You're not on my schedule. Who are you?" "Officer Reuben Castaigne, Narcotics, 4-1 Precinct. I need to report corruption." Her expression didn't change. "Close the door. Sit down." I did. She pulled out a legal pad and a pen, set them in front of her, and leaned back in her chair. "Talk." I told her everything. The failed raid, Lydia's murder, the phone call Vince made 2 days before the bust, the meeting with Maria, Ernesto's phone. I laid it all out, didn't hold anything back, and when I was done, I slid the phone across her desk. Kellerman picked it up, scrolled through it for a long time without saying a word. Her face remained neutral, unreadable. Finally, she set it down and looked at me. "This is bad. I know. Not just bad for Vince Ardell, bad for the whole department. If this gets out, if the press gets hold of it, every case Ardell touched for the past 10 years gets called into question. Convictions get overturned. Dealers walk. It's a nightmare." "So what do you want me to do?" I asked. "Pretend I didn't see it? Let him keep killing informants?" Kellerman's eyes hardened. "I didn't say that. I said it's bad, but we're going to handle it the right way. Which means you don't talk to anyone about this. Not your sergeant, not your friends, not your girlfriend if you have one. No one. You go back to work, you act normal, and you let me build the case." "How long is that going to take?" "As long as it takes," she said. "We need to corroborate everything on this phone. Run financial records, interview witnesses, cross-reference with other investigations. If we move too fast, Ardell lawyers up and we lose him. If we move too slow, you end up like your informant." "So what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Keep working with him, pretend everything's fine?" "Yes," Kellerman said flatly. "Because if you don't, he'll know something's wrong. And if he knows, he runs. Or worse, he makes you disappear before we can arrest him." I felt the walls closing in. "You're asking me to put my life on the line." "I'm asking you to do your job," Kellerman said. "You came to me because you wanted to do the right thing. This is what the right thing looks like. It's not easy. It's not safe. But it's the only way we take him down without destroying the entire case." I sat there for a long moment, staring at the phone on her desk, thinking about Lydia, thinking about Maria, thinking about how many other people Vince had hurt and how many more he would hurt if I didn't stop him. "Fine," I said. "But if I end up dead, it's on you." Kellerman didn't flinch. "If you end up dead, Officer Castaigne, it's because you made a mistake. Don't make any mistakes." I went back to work that afternoon like nothing had happened. Checked in with the desk sergeant, grabbed a radio, found Vince in the break room drinking coffee and reading the daily news. He looked up when I walked in, smiled like we were still partners, like he hadn't threatened me 2 nights ago. "Reuben, where you been?" "Had some personal stuff to take care of," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee I didn't want. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just needed some time to clear my head after Lydia." Vince nodded, folded his newspaper. "I get it. Losing an informant's tough, but you can't dwell on it. We got work to do. What's the case? New lead on Rafi Soto, Vince said. Got a tip he's moving a shipment tonight. Different location, different crew. Thought we could check it out, see if it's legit. Every alarm in my head went off. Another tip, another raid, another chance for Vince to set me up. But I couldn't refuse, couldn't show suspicion. So I nodded. Yeah, let's do it. We spent the rest of the afternoon prepping. Vince briefed me on the intel, which he said came from a confidential informant he'd been working for months. The shipment was supposed to arrive at a storage facility in Hunts Point around 10 p.m. 2 cars, 4 guys, 5 kilos of heroin. Big enough to make an impact, small enough to handle with just the 2 of us and a backup unit. But something felt wrong. The intel was too clean, too convenient, and Vince was too relaxed, too confident, like he already knew how this was going to play out. At 9:30 p.m., we rolled out. 2 unmarked cars, me and Vince in the lead. 2 uniformed officers in the backup unit. We staged a block away from the storage facility, lights off, waiting for the signal. Vince was on his phone, texting someone, his face illuminated by the screen. I tried to see who he was texting, but he angled the phone away. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just checking in with the CI," Vince said, pocketing the phone. "Making sure everything's still on." At 9:55 p.m. we moved. The storage facility was a sprawling complex of metal units, poorly lit, surrounded by chain-link fencing. We entered through a side gate, moved on foot, keeping low, weapons drawn. The backup unit stayed at the perimeter ready to block any exits. Vince led the way, moving with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly where you're going. We reached Unit 47, a large garage-style unit with a rolling metal door. Vince held up a hand signaling me to stop. He listened at the door, then nodded. "They're inside. I can hear voices." He radioed the backup unit. "We're going in. Be ready." I felt my heart pounding. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I could feel it in my bones. Vince grabbed the handle of the rolling door, counted down on his fingers. 3, 2, 1. He yanked the door up, and we went in fast, flashlights and weapons up, shouting, "Police, don't move!" The unit was empty, just like the warehouse. No people, no drugs, no cars, nothing. And then I heard it. Behind me, the sound of the metal door slamming shut. I spun around, but it was too late. The door was down, and we were trapped inside. "Vince, what the hell?" But Vince wasn't looking at the door. He was looking at me. And he was smiling. Not a friendly smile, a cold, predatory smile. "Sorry, Reuben," he said, his voice calm, almost casual. "But you should have minded your own business." That's when I saw the gun in his hand. Not his service weapon, a different gun, untraceable. The kind you use when you don't want the bullet tied back to you. I raised my weapon, but Vince was faster. "Don't," he said, aiming at my chest. "You pull that trigger, and those 2 uniforms outside are going to come running. And guess what story I'm going to tell them? That you went crazy, started shooting, that I had to defend myself. They'll believe me, Reuben, because I'm a 12-year veteran and you're the guy who's been acting paranoid for a week." I kept my weapon trained on him, my finger on the trigger, my mind racing. "You killed Lydia." "I did what I had to do," Vince said. "She was a liability, just like you." "IAB knows," I said, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. I gave them everything, the phone, the messages, all of it. For the first time, I saw something flicker in Vince's eyes. Doubt, fear. "You're lying." "I'm not. Lieutenant Sarah Kellerman, Brooklyn South. She's got Ernesto's phone right now. She's building a case. Even if you kill me, you're done." Vince's jaw tightened. His gun hand wavered slightly. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Reuben. You should have just let it go." "I couldn't," I said, "because I'm not like you." For a long moment we stood there, two cops in an empty storage unit, weapons aimed at each other. The only sound, the distant hum of traffic on the expressway. And then Vince lowered his gun. "You're right," he said quietly. "You're not like me, which is why you're not going to make it in this job." He turned and walked towards the door, started to lift it. I kept my weapon on him, waiting for him to turn, to shoot, to do something. But he didn't. He just raised the door halfway, ducked under it, and disappeared into the night. I stood there alone, heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. Vince had let me go. He could have killed me. Could have made it look like a justified shooting. But he didn't. Why? Because he knew I was telling the truth. Because he knew IAB was coming for him. And because killing a cop, even a cop who knew too much, was a line even he wouldn't cross. Or maybe he just wanted me to think that. Maybe this was part of a bigger plan. Maybe I was already dead and just didn't know it yet. I called Kellerman from my car, hands still shaking. Told her what happened. She listened without interrupting. And when I was done, she said, "You need to come in, now. We're putting you in protective custody until we can arrest Ardell." "What about the backup unit? What about the 2 officers who were with us?" "We'll handle them," Kellerman said. "But you need to get off the street. If Ardell knows you talked, he's not going to wait for IAB to come knocking. He's going to tie up loose ends." I drove to Brooklyn, checking my mirrors every 10 seconds, convinced I was being followed. Made it to Kellerman's office just after midnight. She had 2 other IAB investigators with her, both in plain clothes, both armed. They took my statement, confiscated my service weapon for ballistics testing, and then drove me to a safe house in Queens. It was a small apartment in a nondescript building in Astoria. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, bars on the windows. One of the investigators stayed with me, a guy in his 30s named Paul Driscoll. He sat up in the living room with a laptop and a radio, monitoring police frequencies, waiting for word on Vince. I sat in the bedroom, staring at the wall, replaying the confrontation in my head. Vince had been ready to kill me. I'd seen it in his eyes, but he'd hesitated. Why? What stopped him? The answer came 3 hours later. At 3:12 a.m., Driscoll knocked on my door, his face pale. "Turn on the news." I followed him to the living room. He switched on the TV, flipped to NY1. The anchor was in the middle of a breaking news segment, her voice urgent. "An NYPD officer has been found dead in the Bronx." According to sources, Officer Vincent Ardell, a 12-year veteran of the Narcotics Division, was discovered in his personal vehicle in a parking lot in Hunts Point. He appeared to have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police are investigating, but initial reports suggest suicide. Ardell was reportedly under investigation by Internal Affairs for alleged corruption. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Vince was dead. He'd killed himself. Or someone had made it look like he killed himself. Driscoll muted the TV, looked at me. "You think it was suicide?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about Vince in that storage unit, the way he'd lowered his gun, the way he'd walked away. He'd known it was over, known he was done. But had he known enough to take his own life? Or had someone decided to take it for him? "I don't know," I said finally. "But either way, we lost our case." Driscoll shook his head. "Not necessarily. We still have the phone. We still have the messages. And now we have a dead cop, which means the press is going to demand answers. IAB will have to follow through, dig deeper, see who else was involved. This might just be the beginning." He was right. But it didn't make me feel any better. because Vince Ardell might be dead, but Rafael Soto wasn't, and neither were the other cops who might have been on his payroll. Vince was just one piece of a bigger machine, and machines don't stop running just because you remove one gear. I stayed in that safe house for 3 days. On the 4th day, Kellerman came to see me. She looked tired, worn down, like she'd been fighting a war she couldn't win. "We executed search warrants on Ardell's home and storage unit," she said, sitting across from me in the small living room. "Found cash, lots of it. Almost $200,000, hidden in vacuum-sealed bags. Also found burner phones, ledgers, and records of wire transfers to offshore accounts. He was dirty, no question. But here's the problem. We can't tie any of it directly to Rafael Soto or his crew. Everything's laundered, hidden behind shell companies and intermediaries. Without Ardell's testimony, we can't prove the connection." "What about Maria?" I asked. "Rafael's sister. She was willing to testify." Kellerman's face darkened. "Maria Soto is dead. Found in her apartment in Soundview 2 days ago. Overdose. Heroin laced with fentanyl. Medical examiner ruled it accidental, but we both know it wasn't." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Maria, the woman who'd risked her life to give me the truth, dead. Just like Lydia. Just like everyone who got too close to this. "So what now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Now," Kellerman said. "You go back to work. You keep your head down. You don't talk about this case, don't investigate on your own, don't play hero. Because whoever killed Ardell, whoever killed Maria, they're still out there. And they know who you are. You're telling me to just give up?" "I'm telling you to stay alive," Kellerman said. "We'll keep investigating. We'll keep building the case, but it's going to take time. And in the meantime, you need to be smart, because you're not safe. Not yet." She left, and I sat there in that safe house, staring at the walls, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. I'd done the right thing. I'd reported the corruption. I'd tried to stop it. And all I had to show for it were 3 dead bodies and a target on my back. I went back to work on a Monday morning, 8 days after Vince's death. The precinct felt different. Colder. The other cops looked at me differently too, like I was contaminated, like whatever had killed Vince might be contagious. Internal Affairs had cleared me of any wrongdoing in his death, but that didn't matter. In the eyes of most cops, talking to IAB made you a rat. And rats don't survive long in the NYPD. My new partner was a guy named Tommy Rivas. 5 years in narcotics, solid reputation, quiet. He didn't ask questions about Vince, didn't mention the investigation. Just showed up for roll call and treated me like any other cop. I didn't know if that made him trustworthy or just smart enough to keep his distance. The sergeant pulled me aside after briefing. His name was Sergeant Dale Pruitt, a 20-year veteran with a face like worn leather and eyes that had seen too much. "Castaigne, you doing okay?" "Yeah, Sarge, I'm good." He studied me for a moment, like he was trying to read something in my face. Ardell was a good cop. What happened to him, that's a tragedy. But it's over now, you understand? It's over. You move on, you do your job, you don't look back. "I understand." "Good," Pruitt said. "Because we've got work to do. Rafael Soto's still out there, and with Ardell gone, we need bodies on the street. You and Rivas are taking over Ardell's caseload. I'm expecting results." He walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the hallway, feeling the weight of it settle on my shoulders. Ardell's caseload, which meant I'd be working the same cases Vince had been feeding to Rafael Soto, which meant whoever had been working with Vince was still out there, still watching, still waiting to see what I'd do. The first week back was uneventful. Tommy and I ran surveillance on known drug corners, made a few low-level buys, wrote reports. Nothing major, nothing that would put us on anyone's radar, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every unmarked car that passed, every plainclothes cop I didn't recognize, every phone call that disconnected before I could answer. I was paranoid, and I knew it. But in my situation, paranoia was survival. On Friday, we caught a break. A CI Tommy had been working reached out with intel on a stash house in Morrisania. Said Rafael Soto's crew was storing product there, rotating it every few days to avoid detection. It was good intel, see, the kind that could lead to a solid bust and maybe, if we were lucky, a link to Rafi himself. We briefed Sergeant Pruitt, assembled a team, and planned the raid for Sunday night. 6 officers, entry team, warrants secured. Everything by the book. But as we were leaving the briefing, I noticed something. One of the officers on the team, a guy named Marcus Halloway, was on his phone, texting. When he saw me looking, he quickly put it away and walked out. I pulled Tommy aside. "You know Halloway?" "Yeah, good cop. Been in narcotics for about 3 years. Why?" "Just wondering," I said, trying to sound casual. "He work with Vince much?" Tommy frowned. "I don't know, maybe. Why are you asking?" "No reason," I said. But my mind was already racing. What if Halloway was dirty too? What if he was the one who'd been working with Vince, feeding intel to Soto? What if he was texting Rafi right now, warning him about the raid? I couldn't say any of this to Tommy. Couldn't risk word getting back to Halloway or anyone else. So I just nodded and said, "Let's get ready for Sunday." Sunday night came. We staged 3 blocks from the stash house, a rundown 3-story brownstone on Grand Concourse. The intel said the product was on the 2nd floor, guarded by 2 guys, both armed. We'd hit it fast, secure the occupants, seize the drugs, and hopefully get someone to flip on Rafi. At 10 p.m., we moved. Entry team went in first, battering ram on the front door, officers flooding the hallway. Tommy and I were second wave, clearing rooms, securing evidence. The first floor was empty. We moved up the stairs, weapons drawn, the sound of shouting and boots echoing through the building. The 2nd floor had 3 apartments. The first 2 were empty. The 3rd had the door reinforced with a metal security gate. The entry team used bolt cutters, ripped it open, and breached the door. We went in fast, shouting commands, and that's when everything went wrong. The apartment was empty, not just empty of people, empty of everything. No furniture, no drugs, no evidence, just bare walls and stained carpet. It had been cleaned out, wiped down, abandoned. Sergeant Pruitt stood in the middle of the empty living room, his face dark with anger. "What the hell happened?" "They knew we were coming," one of the officers said. Pruitt turned to Tommy. "Your CI sold you bad intel." "No," Tommy said, shaking his head. "He was solid. He's been good before. Someone tipped them off." Pruitt's eyes swept the room, landing on me. For a second, I saw suspicion there, like he was wondering if I was the leak. But then he looked away, keyed his radio. "All units stand down. Secure the scene and let's get out of here." We filed out of the building, the mood tense. Everyone looking at each other, wondering who the rat was. I felt eyes on me, whispers behind my back. They were thinking it. They were wondering if I'd burned the case, if I was the leak. But I wasn't, which meant someone else was, and that someone was on this team. I couldn't let it go. That night, I went back to my apartment and pulled up the case files on my laptop. I cross-referenced every officer who'd been at the briefing, looking for patterns, connections, anything that might point to who was feeding information to Soto. Marcus Halloway kept coming up. He'd been present at 3 other raids in the past 6 months, all of them narcotics cases, all of them targeting Soto's crew. And all 3 had come up empty, just like tonight. That couldn't be a coincidence. I needed proof, so I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I pulled Holloway's personnel file. Nothing unusual, clean record, solid arrests, no red flags. But then I checked his financial disclosures, the forms every cop has to fill out annually, and that's when I saw it. 2 years ago, Holloway had reported income from a consulting business. The business was registered in New Jersey, listed as inactive. But when I dug deeper, I found something interesting. The business shared an address with one of Rafael Soto's known front companies. It was thin. It wasn't enough for a warrant or an arrest, but it was enough to make me certain. Holloway was dirty. He was the leak. I called Kellerman the next morning, told her what I'd found. She listened, asked questions, and when I was done, she said, "I'll look into it. But you need to be careful, Castaigne. If Holloway is dirty and he finds out you're onto him, you're in danger." "I know," I said, "but I can't just sit back and do nothing, not again." "Then don't do anything stupid," Kellerman said. "Let me handle this. Give me a week to build the case." I hung up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that a week was too long. That by the time IAB moved, Holloway would be gone, or I'd be dead. The next day at work, I kept my distance from Holloway. Didn't engage, didn't make eye contact, just stayed focused on my own cases. But I noticed something. Holloway was watching me. Every time I looked up, he was there across the room, staring. Not hostile, just watching. Like he was waiting for me to make a move. At the end of shift, Tommy pulled me aside. "Hey, you okay? You've been acting weird all day." "I'm fine," I said, "just tired." "Look, I know what happened with Vince messed you up," Tommy said. "And I know people are talking, but you're a good cop, Ruben. Don't let this job eat you alive." I appreciated the sentiment, but it didn't help. Because Tommy didn't know the truth. Didn't know that the job had already eaten me alive. That I was just a hollow shell going through the motions, waiting for the next betrayal, the next body, the next bullet with my name on it. That night, I went home and sat in the dark, my service weapon on the coffee table, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. And at 2:37 a.m., it did. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Officer Castaigne." A man's voice. Calm, controlled, familiar. "Who is this?" "Marcus Holloway. We need to talk." My heart stopped. "How did you get this number?" "Same way I know you've been digging into my background. Same way I know you called IAB this morning. You're not as careful as you think you are, Ruben." I felt cold sweat running down my back. "What do you want?" "To meet, tomorrow night, alone. There's a parking garage on 138th and Brook Avenue. 3rd level, 10 p.m. Come alone, no wire, no backup. If I see anyone else, I disappear and you never get answers." "Why should I trust you?" Holloway laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You shouldn't, but you're going to come anyway. Because you want to know the truth. You want to know who killed Vince, who killed Maria, who's been running this whole thing. And I'm the only one who can tell you." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, my mind racing. It was a trap, it had to be. Holloway knew I was on to him, so he was luring me to a meeting where he could kill me and make it look like a drug deal gone wrong. Like I was dirty, like I deserved it. But he was right about one thing. I was going to go. Because I needed answers. And because I was tired of running. I didn't tell Kellerman, didn't tell Tommy, didn't tell anyone. I just showed up at that parking garage at 10 p.m., weapon concealed under my jacket, every sense on high alert. The garage was mostly empty, poorly lit, the kind of place where bad things happen and no one sees. I took the stairs to the 3rd level, found Holloway standing next to a concrete pillar, hands in his pockets, no visible weapon. He looked relaxed, almost bored. "You came," he said. "You said you had answers." "I do." Holloway stepped forward, and I instinctively reached for my weapon. He held up his hands. "Relax. I'm not here to kill you. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead already." "Then, what do you want?" Holloway studied me for a moment, and then sighed. "I want out. I want immunity, and I want protection. In exchange, I'll give you everything. Names, dates, transactions, the whole network." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "You're admitting you're dirty?" "I am," Holloway said simply. "Have been for 3 years. Vince recruited me. Said it was easy money, that Soto paid better than the city, that no one would ever know, and for a while, it worked. But then you started asking questions, and Vince got sloppy. And now Vince is dead, and I'm next unless I make a deal." "Who killed Vince?" Holloway shook his head. "I don't know. Could have been Soto, tying up loose ends. Could have been someone higher up in the department, someone who didn't want the investigation going any further. Could have been Vince himself. I honestly don't know." "What about Maria, Raphael's sister?" "Soto ordered that one," Holloway said. "She was going to testify, so he had her killed. Made it look like an overdose. That's what he does. Cleans up problems before they become threats." "And Lydia?" Holloway hesitated. "That was Vince. He called Ernesto, told him Lydia was a rat. Ernesto did the rest." I felt rage building in my chest. "You knew. You knew Vince killed her, and you did nothing. I'm a dirty cop, Ruben, not a saint. I did what I had to do to survive, just like you're doing now." "I'm nothing like you," I spat. "Aren't you?" Holloway said, tilting his head. "You're here, alone. Off the books. Meeting with a corrupt cop in a parking garage. You didn't tell IAB. You didn't tell your sergeant. You're operating outside the system because you don't trust the system. That makes you just like me." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I'd stopped trusting the department, stopped believing the system could fix itself. And now I was standing in a parking garage making deals with the enemy, just trying to survive. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally. "Get me a deal," Holloway said. "Talk to IAB. Tell them I'm willing to cooperate. Full testimony. Everything they need to take down Soto and everyone connected to him. But I need immunity and witness protection. If I don't get that, I'm gone, and so is your case." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Holloway reached into his jacket. I tensed, hand moving toward my weapon, but he just pulled out a USB drive and tossed it to me. I caught it, looked at it. "What's on this?" "Proof," Holloway said. "Recorded conversations, financial records, meeting notes. Everything you need to prove I'm not lying. Take it to IAB, make the deal, and maybe, just maybe, we both get out of this alive." He turned and started walking toward the stairwell. I called after him. "Why are you doing this? Why now?" Holloway stopped, looked back at me. "Because I'm tired, Ruben. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of wondering when Soto's going to decide I'm a liability. Tired of being a dirty cop. I want out, and you're my ticket." He disappeared down the stairs, leaving me alone on that empty parking level, holding a USB drive that might be my salvation or my death sentence. I drove straight to Kellerman's office. It was almost midnight, but she was still there. Working late like she always did, I walked in without knocking, dropped the USB drive on her desk. "Holloway's dirty. He wants to make a deal." Kellerman picked up the drive, examined it. "You met with him?" "Yeah." "Alone?" "Yeah." She stared at me, and I could see the anger in her eyes. "That was stupid, Castaigne. He could have killed you." "But he didn't. He wants immunity and protection. In exchange, he'll give you everything." Kellerman plugged the USB into her computer, started scrolling through the files. Her face went pale. "Jesus Christ, this is huge. Soto, Ardell, 3 other cops I recognize, wire transfers, shipment schedules, everything." "So, make the deal," I said. Kellerman leaned back in her chair, rubbed her eyes. "It's not that simple. Holloway's a cop. Giving him immunity means letting him walk for crimes he committed while wearing a badge. The department's not going to like that." "I don't care what the department likes," I said, my voice rising. "This is our chance to take down Soto and everyone protecting him. If we don't make this deal, Holloway disappears, and we lose everything." Kellerman stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll take it to the DA's office tomorrow. But Castaigne, you need to understand something. If this goes sideways, if Holloway's lying, or if someone kills him before he can testify, this case dies, and so does your career." "My career's already dead," I said. "I just want to make sure Soto goes down with it." The DA's office took 48 hours to review Holloway's evidence. 48 hours of me sitting in that safe house in Queens, staring at the walls, wondering if Holloway was still alive, if Soto had figured out what was happening, if I'd made the biggest mistake of my career. Kellerman called me twice a day with updates. They were verifying the recordings, cross-referencing the financial transactions, building a case that could withstand scrutiny in court. It was solid, she said. The best corruption case she'd seen in 20 years. On Wednesday morning, the deal was approved. Full immunity for Marcus Holloway in exchange for his testimony against Rafael Soto and any other officers involved in the conspiracy. Witness protection, relocation, new identity, the whole package. All he had to do was show up, sign the paperwork, and start talking. Kellerman arranged the meeting for Thursday afternoon at a federal building in Manhattan. Neutral ground, away from the Bronx, away from anyone who might be watching. Holloway was told to come alone. Enter through the underground garage, take a service elevator to the 14th floor. Maximum security, minimal exposure. I wasn't supposed to be there. Kellerman had made that clear. This was IAB's case now. Federal prosecutors, witness protection coordinators. My part was done. But I couldn't stay away. I needed to see it through. Needed to know that Holloway would actually show up. That this wasn't all just another lie, another dead end. So I went. Parked 3 blocks away, walked to the building, showed my badge to security, and took the stairs to the 14th floor. Found Kellerman in a conference room with 2 assistant district attorneys and a U.S. Marshal. They looked up when I walked in. "Castaigne," Kellerman said, her voice sharp. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know, but I need to see this." She studied me for a moment, then nodded to the empty chair in the corner. "Fine, but you don't say a word. This is our show now." I sat down, watched the clock on the wall. 2:47 p.m. Holloway was supposed to arrive at 3 o'clock p.m. The minutes crawled by. 2:55, 2:58, 3 o'clock, no Holloway. At 3:05, Kellerman picked up her phone, dialed his number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. She hung up, dialed again. Same thing. "Something's wrong," one of the ADAs said. Kellerman was already on her feet, moving towards the door. Stay here. I'm going downstairs to check the garage. I followed her, ignoring her protest. We took the elevator down, emerged in the underground parking structure. It was mostly empty, just a few government vehicles, concrete pillars, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Kellerman walked toward the area where Holloway was supposed to park, and that's when we saw it. A car, black sedan, engine still running, driver's door open, and slumped over the steering wheel, a body. We ran. Kellerman got there first, pulled open the door, checked for a pulse. Her face went pale. He's dead. I looked inside. Marcus Holloway, eyes open, staring at nothing. A small hole in the side of his head, blood pooled in his lap. A single gunshot, close range, execution style, the same way they'd killed Lydia, the same way they'd killed Maria. "Call it in," Kellerman said, her voice tight. "Lock down the building, get security footage from every camera, find out who did this." But I already knew. We both did. Rafael Soto had known Holloway was about to flip. Someone had tipped him off, and he'd sent a message. You don't betray the family, you don't cooperate with the police, and if you try, you die. The investigation into Holloway's murder went nowhere. The building's security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned during the exact window when the shooting occurred. No footage, no witnesses, no evidence. The bullet was a .22 caliber, common, untraceable. Forensics found no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing. It was a professional hit, clean and efficient, and whoever did it was already gone. Kellerman tried to salvage the case. She had the USB drive, the recordings, the financial records, but without Holloway's testimony, it was all circumstantial. Defense attorneys would tear it apart, claim the evidence was fabricated, that Holloway was a disgruntled cop trying to frame innocent people. The DA's office declined to prosecute, said there wasn't enough to secure a conviction. Rafael Soto walked. So did everyone else. I went back to work the following Monday. Back to patrol, back to the South Bronx, back to the same streets where Vince had worked, where Holloway had worked, where God knows how many other dirty cops were still working. Tommy Rivas was gone, transferred to Brooklyn at his own request. My new partner was a rookie fresh out of the academy, a kid named Danny Ortega who didn't know anything about narcotics, didn't know anything about corruption, didn't know that the cop sitting next to him was a marked man. Sergeant Pruitt called me into his office after roll call, closed the door, looked at me with those worn, tired eyes. "Castaigne, I'm going to be straight with you. What happened with Ardell, with Holloway, it's bad for the department. Makes us all look dirty. And the brass, they want it to go away. They want people to forget, which means they want you to forget." "I'm not going to forget," I said. Pruitt leaned back in his chair. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm telling you to let it go, because if you keep pushing, if you keep digging, you're not going to find justice. You're just going to find more bodies, and one of them's going to be yours." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice," Pruitt said. "From someone who's been around long enough to know how this works. You did your part. You reported the corruption. You tried to make it right. But some things can't be fixed, Reuben. Some things are too broken. And if you keep trying to fix them, they'll break you too." He stood up, opened the door. "Go home. Take a few days off. Think about what you want to do. Because if you come back, you need to come back ready to just be a cop. Not a crusader, not a hero. Just a cop." I left his office, walked out of the precinct, and sat in my car for an hour staring at the building, thinking about Lydia, about Maria, about Vince, about Holloway, about all the people who died because they'd gotten too close to the truth. And I realized Pruitt was right. I couldn't win this. The system was too corrupt, too entrenched, too willing to protect itself at any cost. But I also couldn't just let it go. I didn't take Pruitt's advice. I went back to work the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I kept my head down, did my job, wrote my reports. But I also kept digging, quietly, carefully, on my own time, using my own resources. I started tracking Rafael Soto's operations, where he moved product, who his suppliers were, where his money went. I documented everything, built my own case file, stored it on an encrypted drive hidden in my apartment. I knew I couldn't take it to IAB, couldn't trust the department. But maybe, someday, I could take it to the feds, to a journalist, to someone who could actually do something with it. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year, and nothing changed. Soto kept operating. His crew kept slinging dope on the same corners. The bodies kept piling up. Overdoses, shootings, disappearances. Business as usual in the South Bronx. But I kept watching, kept documenting, kept building my case, because I'd made a promise to myself, to Lydia, to Maria, to everyone who'd died trying to stop this. I was going to take Soto down, even if it took the rest of my career, even if it killed me. And then, on a Tuesday night in March, I got a call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Officer Castaigne? A woman's voice, familiar, but I couldn't place it. Who is this? Someone who wants to help you. Someone who knows what Rafael Soto did. And someone who has proof. My heart started racing. What kind of proof? The kind that will put him away for life. But I need protection. I need to know you can keep me safe. Who are you? I asked again. There was a long pause, then, my name is Elena Soto, Rafael's wife, and I'm ready to testify. I met Elena 2 days later in a diner in Yonkers, far from the Bronx, far from anyone who might recognize us. She was in her mid-30s, dark hair, tired eyes, the kind of woman who'd seen too much and carried the weight of it in every movement. She sat across from me in a booth in the back, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. Why now? I asked. Why are you coming forward now? Elena stared at her coffee. Because I'm tired. Tired of living with a monster. Tired of watching him destroy lives. Tired of being complicit. You knew what he was doing? I knew, she said quietly. I knew about the drugs, the murders, the cops on his payroll. I knew everything. And I did nothing because I was scared. Scared he'd kill me if I left. Scared he'd kill my family. Scared I'd end up like all the other people who tried to stand up to him. What changed? Elena looked up at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. My daughter. She's 12. And last week, I found drugs in her backpack. Not hers. A friend's. A friend whose parents work for Rafael. And I realized that if I don't stop him, my daughter's going to grow up in this world. She's going to become part of it. And I can't let that happen. I leaned forward. What do you have? Elena reached into her purse, pulled out a small notebook. Rafael keeps records. Names, dates, amounts. Everyone he pays, everyone he owns, including the cops. It's all in here. She slid the notebook across the table. I opened it, started flipping through pages. It was all there. Dozens of names. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Wire transfer confirmations. Meeting notes. Payments to police officers, prosecutors, city officials. It was the mother lode. This is incredible, I said. But why come to me? Why not go to the FBI? Because I don't trust the FBI, Elena said. I don't trust IAB. I don't trust anyone in the system. But I heard about you. Heard about what you tried to do with Vince Ardell with Marcus Holloway. Heard that you're one of the few cops who actually gives a damn. So I'm coming to you, because if anyone can stop Raphael, it's you." I looked at the notebook, at all those names, all that evidence, and I felt a surge of hope for the first time in a year. This was it. This was the case that would bring Soto down. But then I saw one of the names on the list, and my blood ran cold. Sergeant Dale Pruitt. My sergeant, the man who'd told me to let it go, the man who'd warned me to stop digging. He was on Soto's payroll, had been for years. I looked up at Elena. "Does Raphael know you're here?" She shook her head. "No, I was careful. I made sure I wasn't followed." "You need to leave New York," I said. "Tonight. Take your daughter and go, because when Raphael finds out this notebook is gone, he's going to come looking for you." "What about the case?" Elena asked. "What about stopping him?" "I'll handle it," I said. "But you need to disappear now." Elena nodded, stood up, started to leave. Then she stopped, looked back at me. "Be careful, Officer Castaigne. Raphael has people everywhere. And if he finds out you have that notebook, you're a dead man." She walked out of the diner, and I sat there alone, holding the notebook that could either save the city or get me killed. I didn't go to Kellerman this time, didn't go to IAB, didn't trust anyone in the department. Instead, I went to the FBI, found a field office in Manhattan, walked in with the notebook, and asked to speak to someone in public corruption. They put me in a room with 2 agents, a man and a woman, both in their 40s, both skeptical. I laid it all out. Soto, Ardell, Holloway, Pruitt, the whole network. Showed them the notebook, explained where it came from, how I got it. They listened without interrupting, took notes, photographed every page. When I was done, the male agent leaned back in his chair. "This is big. If even half of this is true, we're looking at the largest police corruption case in New York history." "It's all true," I said. "We'll need to verify it," the female agent said. "Cross-reference names, check financial records, interview witnesses. That's going to take time." "How much time?" "Months, maybe longer." I felt my stomach drop. Soto's wife is in danger, so am I. We don't have months. "Then we'll move as fast as we can," the male agent said. "But we can't just arrest everyone based on a notebook. We need hard evidence, and we need to make sure the case is airtight." They took the notebook, told me to go home, stay safe, stay quiet, said they'd be in touch. I left that building feeling hollow, because I knew what was going to happen. The FBI would investigate. They'd take their time. And in the meantime, Elena would disappear. I'd disappear. And Soto would walk away clean. 3 days later, Elena Soto's body was found in a motel room in New Jersey. Gunshot to the head. Her daughter wasn't with her. No one knew where the daughter was. The news called it a murder-suicide, said Elena had killed herself after a mental breakdown. But I knew better. Soto had found her, and he'd sent a message. A week after that, I was pulled off the street. Administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. Someone had accused me of leaking information to a known criminal associate, of compromising active investigations, of operating outside the chain of command. The accusations were vague, unsubstantiated, but enough to get me benched. I knew what was happening. Pruitt had found out I'd gone to the FBI, and he was protecting himself, protecting Soto, protecting the network. By the time the FBI finished their investigation, if they ever did, it would be too late. The evidence would disappear. The witnesses would be dead. and I'd be another casualty of a system that eats its own. I sit in my apartment now, writing this. It's been 6 months since I went to the FBI. They haven't arrested anyone, haven't charged anyone. The investigation is ongoing, they say, but I know the truth. It's dead, just like Lydia, just like Maria, just like Vince and Holloway and Elena. I'm still a cop, technically, still on administrative leave, still collecting a paycheck, but I'm not going back, because I know what's waiting for me. A bullet in an alley, a staged suicide, a convenient accident. The department wants me gone, and Soto wants me dead, and sooner or later, one of them will get what they want. I keep Elena's notebook, the copy I made before I gave the original to the FBI. I keep it in a safe place, along with all my other files, all my evidence, all my documentation. Maybe someday someone will find it. Maybe someday someone will care enough to do something with it. But I'm not holding my breath. Last week, I saw Tommy Rivas at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. He didn't recognize me at first. I'd lost weight, grown a beard, stopped looking like a cop. When he finally realized who I was, he came over, sat down. "Reuben, Jesus, I heard you were on leave. You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "I'm fine. You look like hell. I feel like hell." Tommy stared at me for a long moment. "They're saying you went crazy, that you accused half the precinct of being dirty, that you fabricated evidence. Is that what they're saying?" "Yeah. Is it true?" I thought about lying, thought about protecting him, keeping him out of it. But I was tired of lies. "No, it's not true, but it doesn't matter, because no one's going to believe me." Tommy looked away, uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, man. I wish there was something I could do." "There's nothing anyone can do," I said. "System's too broken." He left after that, went back to his life, his career, his belief that good cops can still make a difference. I stayed at that coffee shop for 2 more hours, staring at my cold cup of coffee, wondering when it would happen. When Soto's people would find me, when the bullet would come. It's been 6 months, and I'm still here, still alive, still waiting. But I know it's coming. I can feel it. Every shadow, every footstep, every car that slows down as it passes. I know that somewhere in this city, Rafael Soto is sitting in his comfortable home, surrounded by his money and his power, knowing that he won. That he always wins. That the system protects people like him and destroys people like me. And I know that when I'm gone, when they find my body in an alley or a parking garage or a motel room, the department will say I was troubled, that I couldn't handle the stress, that I did it to myself. And maybe they'll be right, because I'm so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of losing, tired of being the only person who seems to care. Sometimes I think about Lydia, about that night I found Eulalia beaten and broken, about how I thought I could make a difference, about how naive I was. Because the truth is, you can't make a difference. Not in a city this corrupt, not in a system this broken. You can try, you can fight, you can sacrifice everything. But in the end, the monsters always win. I still wear my badge, keep it in my pocket, even though I'm not working. Sometimes I take it out, stare at it, remember what it used to mean. Protect and serve. Justice. Integrity. Now it just feels like a lie. Last night, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Stopped right outside my door. I sat there in the dark, weapon in my hand, waiting. But whoever it was, they didn't knock. They just stood there for maybe 5 minutes, then walked away. Maybe it was Soto's people. Maybe it was just a neighbor. Maybe it was my imagination. Doesn't matter. Because I know they're coming. It's just a matter of when. I think about running. About leaving New York. changing my name, disappearing. But where would I go? And what would be the point? Soto's reach is long, and the guilt would follow me anywhere. So I stay. I wait. I keep the notebook safe. Keep hoping that maybe, someday, someone will care enough to use it. But mostly, I just wait for the bullet that has my name on it, because I know it's coming. I've been a patrol officer with the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office for 9 years. My name is Gideon Rourke, and for the past 6 of those years, I've worked the overnight shift on Highway 57, a stretch of 2-lane blacktop that runs through some of the most isolated parts of upstate New York. It's the kind of road where you can drive for 20 miles without seeing another car, where the trees press in so close they block out the moonlight, where cell phone service cuts out for miles at a time, and you're alone with nothing but static on the radio and the yellow lines disappearing under your headlights. Most people avoid Highway 57 after dark. Locals know better. They take the longer route, add an extra 30 minutes to their drive, just to stay on the main roads where there's light and traffic and the illusion of safety. But some people don't know. Tourists, truckers passing through, people using GPS that doesn't account for reputation, only distance. They take Highway 57 because it's the fastest route between Albany and Poughkeepsie, and they figure a road's a road. Until it isn't. The first disappearance happened 3 years ago. November, late at night. Temperature dropping below freezing. A college kid named Brandon Kemper was driving home from a party at SUNY New Paltz. His girlfriend had texted him around 11:30 p.m., asked him to call when he got home. He texted back 20 minutes. That was the last anyone heard from him. His car was found the next morning by a state trooper doing a routine patrol. Silver Honda Accord, pulled over on the shoulder near mile marker 34, engine off, driver's door open. Keys still in the ignition. Phone on the passenger seat, wallet in the cup holder, nothing missing. But no Brandon. We searched for 3 days. Canine units, helicopters, volunteers combing the woods on both sides of the highway. Found nothing. No footprints leading away from the car, no signs of struggle, no blood, no body. It was like he'd stepped out of his car and vanished into thin air. The official report called it a voluntary missing person. The theory was that Brandon had maybe been drinking, got disoriented, wandered into the woods, and succumbed to exposure. But his blood alcohol came back clean, and the woods around mile marker 34 aren't that dense. You'd have to try pretty hard to get lost there. Still, people wrote it off. Tragic accident. Bad luck, move on. Then it happened again. 6 months later, April. Warmer weather but still cold at night. A trucker named Dennis Holloway was hauling a load from Montreal to Philadelphia. His dispatch lost contact with him around 2 a.m. His truck was found at sunrise, parked on the shoulder near mile marker 41, engine idling, trailer still locked and loaded. But Dennis was gone. Same story. Keys in the ignition, wallet in the cab. No signs of foul play, no signs of struggle. Just gone. This time, people started talking. 2 disappearances on the same highway, both in the middle of the night, both within 10 miles of each other. Coincidence? Maybe. But the locals didn't think so. They started calling it the Devil's Stretch, that section of Highway 57 between mile markers 34 and 44. Started telling stories about ghosts, about cursed land, about things in the woods that didn't belong there. Sheriff Wallace Crane held a press conference, tried to calm people down. Said there was no evidence of foul play, no reason to believe the disappearances were connected. Said it was just bad luck, that people need to be more careful when driving at night, that we were doing everything we could to find answers. But I knew he didn't believe it, because I'd been on that highway every night for 6 years, and I knew something was wrong. You could feel it when you drove through that stretch. The air got colder, the darkness got thicker, and the trees seemed to lean in closer like they were watching. Most nights, I avoided it, found excuses to patrol other areas, other roads. But some nights I couldn't. Some nights, dispatch would send me through there, and I'd drive with my hand on my weapon, my eyes scanning the tree line, waiting for something to happen. Nothing ever did, but the feeling never went away. The third disappearance changed everything. It was October, almost 3 years to the day after Brandon Kemper vanished. A woman named Claire Hendricks, 32, nurse at a hospital in Kingston, was driving home from her shift. She'd called her husband at 11:45 p.m., told him she was tired, told him she'd be home soon. Her car was found at 6 a.m. by a maintenance worker, pulled over near mile marker 38, engine off, driver's door open, purse still on the seat. But this time, there was something different. This time, there were footprints. Not Claire's. Someone else's. Large boot prints, size 11 or 12, leading away from the car and into the woods. We followed them for half a mile before they just stopped. Not faded, not obscured by leaves or mud. Just stopped. Like whoever made them had been lifted off the ground. The canine units picked up a scent, tracked it for another quarter mile, then lost it near an old logging road that hadn't been used in decades. We searched the area, found tire tracks, fresh ones leading deeper into the woods. We followed them for 3 miles until they disappeared into a section of forest so thick and overgrown we had to turn back. Sheriff Crane called in the state police, the FBI. They set up a command post, brought in forensic teams, analysts, behavioral specialists. They combed through every inch of that highway looking for clues, for patterns, for anything that could explain what was happening. And they found something. Not in the woods, in the records. Highway 57 had a history. Going back 40 years, there had been 16 unsolved disappearances along that 10-mile stretch. 16 people, all vanished in the middle of the night, all leaving their cars behind, all gone without a trace. Some of the cases were old, written off as accidents or runaways. But when you put them all together, when you saw the pattern, it was undeniable. Something was happening on Highway 57, and it had been happening for a long time. The FBI set up surveillance. Cameras at every mile marker between 34 and 44. Unmarked cars parked on the shoulder. Agents watching, waiting. They brought in a criminal profiler who said we were dealing with a serial predator, someone who knew the area, who used the isolation and the darkness to his advantage, who probably lived nearby and had been operating for decades. But weeks passed, then months, and nothing happened. No more disappearances, no suspicious activity, just an empty highway and the sound of wind through the trees. The FBI pulled out after 3 months, said they didn't have the resources to maintain a presence indefinitely, that without new leads or new victims, there was nothing more they could do. The cameras stayed up for a while, but eventually, those came down too. Budget cuts, they said. Other priorities. Life went back to normal. Or as normal as it could be when 3 people had vanished and no one knew why. I kept working the night shift, kept driving Highway 57, but I was more careful now. I never pulled over unless I absolutely had to. Never stopped to check on abandoned cars without calling for backup first. And I never, ever got out of my patrol car in that 10-mile stretch unless there was another officer with me. 6 months passed without incident, then a year. People started to forget. Started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whoever had been taking people had moved on or died or just stopped. But I knew better, because every time I drove through that stretch, I felt it. That cold, creeping sensation that something was watching, waiting. and I knew deep in my gut that it wasn't over. It was just getting started. It was a Friday night in late February when I got the call. Dispatch, crackling over the radio, voice urgent. Unit 12, we have a 1050, possible injury, Highway 57 near mile marker 36. Caller reports a vehicle off the road, hazard lights on, requesting immediate response. I was 10 minutes away, finishing up a traffic stop in Pine Plains. I acknowledged the call, flipped on my lights, and headed toward the highway. The roads were slick with freezing rain, the kind that turns blacktop into glass and makes every turn a gamble. I drove carefully, but fast, my heart already starting to pound. Mile marker 36, right in the middle of the Devil's Stretch. I reached Highway 57 and turned south, scanning the road for the vehicle. The rain was coming down harder now, my wipers barely keeping up, visibility maybe 50 feet. I slowed down, checked the mile markers. 40, 39, 38. Then I saw it. Hazard lights flashing in the darkness, cutting through the rain like a beacon. A car pulled over on the right shoulder, driver's door closed, no one visible inside. I pulled up behind it, called it in. Dispatch, Unit 12 on scene at mile marker 36. One vehicle appears unoccupied. Running the plate now. I ran the plate through the system. Came back registered to a white Ford Escape. Owner listed as Margaret Vellner, age 63, address in Rhinebeck. No warrants, no priors, clean record. I grabbed my flashlight, checked my surroundings, and stepped out of the patrol car. The rain hit me immediately, cold and sharp, soaking through my jacket. I approached the vehicle slowly, hand on my weapon, flashlight sweeping the interior. The car was empty. Keys in the ignition, engine off, hazard lights still blinking. A purse sat on the passenger seat, a thermos in the cup holder, a phone plugged into the charger. Everything normal, everything wrong. I checked the back seat. Empty, checked the trunk, empty. Walked a circle around the car, looking for footprints, for drag marks, for any sign of where the driver had gone. Nothing. Just wet pavement and the sound of rain drumming on metal. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, Unit 12. Vehicle is unoccupied. No signs of the driver. Requesting backup in a canine unit to my location. Copy, Unit 12. Nearest unit is 15 minutes out. Stand by. 15 minutes. On Highway 57. In the middle of the Devil's Stretch. Alone. I stood there next to the Ford Escape. Flashlight in one hand, weapon in the other, scanning the tree line. The woods were pitch black, impenetrable, the kind of darkness that seems to swallow light. I tried to listen for footsteps, for voices, for anything, but all I heard was rain and the faint hum of the hazard lights. That's when I saw it. A shape, maybe 30 feet into the woods, just at the edge of my flashlight's beam. Tall, humanoid, standing perfectly still. Not moving, just watching. My blood ran cold. I raised my flashlight, aimed it directly at the shape. For a second, I saw it clearly. A figure, wearing dark clothing, face obscured, hands at its sides. Then it moved. Not walked, moved. Backward, deeper into the woods, too fast, too smooth, like it was gliding. And then it was gone. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. Every instinct screaming at me to get back in my car, to leave, to call for more backup, to do anything but stand there alone in the rain. But I couldn't, because somewhere out there, in those woods, was a 63-year-old woman named Margaret Vellner. And if I left, if I waited for backup, she might be gone by the time they arrived. I made a decision. A stupid one, maybe, but the only one I could live with. I stepped into the woods. The first few steps were easy. The underbrush wasn't too thick near the road, and my flashlight cut a clear path. But the deeper I went, the darker it got, the trees closing in overhead, branches scraping against my jacket. I called out, my voice sounding small and hollow in the vastness of the forest. "Ma'am, this is the sheriff's office. If you can hear me, call out." Nothing, just the sound of rain filtering through the canopy, dripping onto dead leaves. I moved forward, sweeping my flashlight left and right, looking for footprints, for broken branches, for any sign of passage. And then I found something, a shoe, a woman's shoe, brown leather, lying in the mud. I knelt down, picked it up. It was still warm. "Ma'am, Margaret, can you hear me?" A sound, faint, distant, coming from deeper in the woods. A voice, maybe. Or just the wind. I kept moving, faster now, pushing through the underbrush, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. And then I saw her. Margaret Vellner. Lying on the ground, 20 feet ahead, motionless. I ran to her, dropped to my knees, checked for a pulse. It was there, weak but steady. Her eyes were open, staring up at the sky, unblinking like she was in shock. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm a police officer. You're safe now." She didn't respond, didn't even seem to register my presence, just kept staring up at nothing, her lips moving slightly, forming words I couldn't hear. I called for an ambulance, gave them my location as best I could. Then I tried to move her, to get her on her feet, to walk her back to the road. But she wouldn't move. Her body was rigid, locked in place, like she was paralyzed. That's when I heard it. Behind me, the sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. I spun around, raised my flashlight and my weapon. "Sheriff's office, show yourself!" The footsteps stopped, and then, from the darkness, a voice. Low, calm, almost amused. "You shouldn't have come into the woods, Officer Rourke." My blood turned to ice. Whoever this was, they knew my name. I kept my weapon trained on the darkness, my flashlight beam cutting through the rain and the trees, searching for the source of that voice. My finger rested on the trigger, every muscle in my body coiled tight, ready to fire. But I couldn't see anyone. Just shadows and trees and the endless black of the forest. "Show yourself!" I shouted again, my voice stronger than I felt. "This is your last warning." The voice came again, from a different direction this time, off to my left. "You can't help her, Officer Rourke. She's already gone, just like the others. Who are you?" I demanded, spinning towards the sound. "What did you do to these people?" A laugh, cold, mirthless. "I didn't do anything. I just watch. I document. I make sure people remember." "Remember what?" "That some roads aren't meant to be traveled, some places aren't meant to be found, and some people aren't meant to leave." Behind me, Margaret Vellner made a sound. A whimper, low and broken. I glanced back at her, still lying on the ground, still staring up at nothing. Her lips were moving faster now, forming words I still couldn't make out. "What did you do to her?" I asked, my attention split between Margaret and the darkness around me. "Nothing she didn't ask for," the voice said. She stopped. She got out of her car. She walked into the woods, just like all the others. They always do. "Bullshit," I said. "People don't just wander into the woods for no reason, don't they?" The voice was closer now, maybe 15 feet away, still hidden in the darkness. "You did. You heard her. You saw the shoe, and you came running, just like I knew you would." My stomach dropped. This wasn't random. This was planned. Margaret Vellner's car on the side of the road, the shoe in the mud, her lying here just far enough into the woods to draw me in. It was bait, and I'd taken it. "Backup's on the way," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to show yourself, now." "No, Officer Rourke, backup isn't coming, because you're too far from the road now. Radio doesn't work this deep in the woods. Cell phones don't work. You're alone, just like they were. I tried my radio. Static. I pulled out my phone. No signal. He was right. I was cut off, isolated, exactly where he wanted me. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you to understand," the voice said. "I want you to see what I've seen. What this place does to people." "What place? What are you talking about?" A figure stepped out from behind a tree maybe 10 feet away. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. I couldn't see his features, but I could see his hands. Empty. No weapon visible. "This land," he said, gesturing around us. "This stretch of highway. It's been taking people for longer than you've been alive. Longer than I've been alive. It's hungry, always has been." "You're insane," I said, keeping my weapon trained on him. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I'm the only one who sees it clearly. You think I'm the one taking these people? You think I'm some kind of serial killer, hiding in the woods, picking off travelers. Aren't you?" He shook his head slowly. "No, Officer Rourke. I'm just a witness. I document what happens here. I make sure there's a record. Because if I don't, people forget. They move on. They pretend it never happened." "Document?" I said. "What the hell are you talking about?" He reached into his jacket slowly, carefully, and pulled out a camera. An old Polaroid, the kind you don't see anymore. "I take pictures of the people who stop, of the people who leave their cars, of the moment they realize they're not going back. Where are they?" I demanded. "Where are the people you've been watching?" "Gone," he said simply. "The woods take them. I just make sure someone remembers they were here." I felt rage building in my chest. "You're telling me you've been watching people disappear for years and you never reported it, never called for help?" "Who would I call?" he said. "The police? Like you? What are you going to do? Arrest the woods? Arrest the land?" "I'm going to arrest you," I said, taking a step forward. "For obstruction, for stalking, for whatever the hell I can charge you with." He didn't move, just stood there, camera in hand, staring at me. "You still don't understand. This isn't about me. It's about this place. And if you don't leave now, it'll take you too." Behind me, Margaret made another sound. Louder this time. I glanced back and saw her sitting up, her eyes wide, her mouth open in a silent scream. Then she spoke, her voice hoarse and broken. "Run!" I turned back to the man with the camera, but he was gone. Vanished into the darkness like he'd never been there. I swept my flashlight across the trees searching, but there was nothing. Just rain and shadows and the feeling that I was being watched by something I couldn't see. I moved to Margaret, holstered my weapon and grabbed her arm. "Come on, we need to get back to the road." She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and I saw pure terror in her eyes. "It's still here," she whispered. "It's all around us." "What is? What are you talking about?" "The thing in the woods," she said, her voice shaking. "It called to me. It sounded like my daughter who died 10 years ago. It sounded just like her." My blood ran cold. "Margaret, there's nothing here. It's just a man, a disturbed man who's been watching this highway. But he can't hurt you. I'm going to get you out of here." She shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. I heard her. I heard Sarah. She was calling for me. She said she was lost. She said she needed me, so I stopped. I got out of my car, and I followed her voice into the woods. 'There's no one here,' I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Because I'd heard stories like this before. People who claimed they heard voices, saw things, felt compelled to leave their cars and walk into the woods. I'd always written it off as confusion, panic, exposure. But now, hearing it firsthand, seeing the genuine terror in Margaret's eyes, I wasn't so sure. "Help me up," she said. "We need to go, before it comes back." I pulled her to her feet. She was shaking, her legs barely able to support her weight. I put her arm around my shoulders and started walking, retracing my steps back toward the road. But something was wrong. The path I'd taken in, the broken branches, the disturbed leaves, they were gone. It was like the forest had rearranged itself, erasing any trace of my passage. "This way," I said, picking a direction that felt right. But after 50 feet, I realized I had no idea where I was. The trees all looked the same, the darkness was absolute, and my sense of direction was completely shot. I pulled out my compass. The needle spun wildly, unable to find north. I tried my flashlight on the ground, looking for my own footprints, but the rain had washed them away, leaving nothing but mud and leaves. We were lost. I kept Margaret moving, kept us heading in what I hoped was the direction of the road. But minutes passed, then 10 minutes, then 20, and we still hadn't found it. The woods seemed to stretch on forever, dense and maze-like, every direction looking identical. Margaret stumbled, nearly fell. I caught her, helped her sit against a tree. "We need to rest," she said. Her breathing labored. "Just for a minute," I said, scanning the darkness around us. "Then we keep moving." I tried my radio again. Still static. Tried my phone. Still no signal. We were on our own. "How long have you been out here?" I asked Margaret. "I don't know," she said. I stopped my car. I heard Sarah's voice. I walked into the woods. And then, I don't remember. It's all blank until you found me. "Do you remember seeing anyone? A man with a camera?" She shook her head. "No. Just the voice and the feeling that I was being pulled, like something was dragging me deeper into the woods." I thought about the man with the camera, his claim that he was just a witness. If he'd been watching these disappearances for years, documenting them, then he knew something. He knew what was happening, even if he didn't understand it. Or maybe he did understand it and just didn't care. "We're getting out of here," I said, helping Margaret back to her feet. "The road has to be close. We just need to keep moving." We walked for another 15 minutes, and then through the trees I saw something. A light, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Headlights. "There," I said, pointing. "The road." We pushed forward, moving as fast as Margaret could manage. The light got brighter, closer, and then suddenly we broke through the tree line and stumbled onto the shoulder of Highway 57. My patrol car was still there, lights flashing, and next to it was another unit, a Dutchess County Sheriff's cruiser I recognized. Deputy Kyle Brewster stood next to it, flashlight in hand, scanning the woods. "Rourke!" he shouted when he saw me. "Jesus, we've been looking for you for 40 minutes. Dispatch lost contact, we thought." "I'm fine," I said, helping Margaret to the patrol car. "But we need an ambulance, now." Brewster radioed it in while I got Margaret into the back seat of my cruiser. She was still shaking, still staring at the woods like she expected something to come out of them. "What happened out there?" Brewster asked, coming over. I didn't know how to answer. I'd gone into the woods, found Margaret, encountered a man who claimed he'd been documenting disappearances for years. We'd gotten lost, wandered for what felt like forever, and then somehow found our way back. None of it made sense. "I don't know," I said finally, "but something's wrong with those woods. Something's been wrong for a long time." The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, took Margaret to the hospital in Poughkeepsie. I gave my statement to Brewster, told him about the man with the camera, the voice, the way the woods seemed to disorient me. He wrote it all down, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He thought I'd gotten turned around, panicked, imagined things in the dark. Maybe I had. Maybe the stress, the isolation, the stories about the Devil's Stretch had all gotten to me. Maybe there was no man with a camera. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. But I didn't believe that, because I'd heard that voice. I'd seen that figure. And more importantly, Margaret had experienced something too. Something that made her leave her car and walk into the woods in the middle of the night. I drove back to the station, filed my report, and went home just as the sun was coming up. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall, replaying everything that had happened, trying to make sense of it. At noon, my phone rang. It was Sheriff Wallace Crane. "Rourke, my office now." I drove to the county building, went up to his office on the 3rd floor. Crane was sitting behind his desk reading my report, his face hard and unreadable. When I walked in, he looked up. "Close the door," he said. I did. Sat down across from him. "You believe what you wrote in this report?" Crane asked. "Yes, sir." He tossed the report onto his desk. A man with a camera, a voice in the woods, a compass that wouldn't work. "You realize how this sounds?" "I know how it sounds," I said, "but it's what happened." Crane leaned back in his chair, studied me for a long moment. "Margaret Vellner is in stable condition. Doctors say she's suffering from hypothermia and shock, but she'll be fine. She corroborates your story, says she heard her dead daughter's voice, followed it into the woods. Doesn't remember anything after that until you found her. So you believe me?" "I believe something happened," Crane said. "But I don't know what, and that's the problem. Because if I can't explain it, I can't fix it. And if I can't fix it, people keep disappearing." He pulled out a file from his drawer, slid it across the desk. I opened it. Inside were photographs. Crime scene photos from the previous disappearances. Brandon Kemper's car, Dennis Holloway's truck, Claire Hendrick's sedan, and others I hadn't seen before. Older cases going back decades. 16 disappearances in 40 years, Crane said. All on the same 10-mile stretch. All at night. All involving people who stopped their cars and walked into the woods. And in every single case, the investigating officer reported the same things you did. Disorientation, voices, figures in the darkness, compasses that wouldn't work. I looked up at him. "You're saying this has happened to other cops?" 4 of them, Crane said. All of them went into those woods looking for missing people. All of them came out confused, unable to explain what they'd experienced. 2 of them quit within a year. 1 transferred to another county. 1 ate his gun. I felt my stomach turn. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Because no one wants to admit that there's something on Highway 57 we can't explain, Crane said. Something that's been taking people for decades, and we can't stop it. So we write it off as accidents, as voluntary missing persons, as anything that doesn't involve the supernatural or the unexplainable. "What about the man with the camera?" I asked. "Someone's been out there watching, documenting. That's not supernatural. That's real." Crane nodded. "I agree, and I want you to find him." "Me?" "You've seen him, you've heard him. You know more than anyone else. So I'm authorizing you to investigate. Talk to the witnesses, review the old cases, see if anyone else has reported seeing this man. Find out who he is and what he knows." "And if he's right?" I asked. "If there really is something in those woods that can't be explained?" Crane's face darkened. "Then God help us all." I spent the next 3 days reviewing every file, every report, every witness statement from the past 40 years. And slowly, a pattern emerged. not just in the disappearances but in the sightings. 7 different people, spread across 4 decades, had reported seeing a man in the woods near Highway 57. Always the same description. Tall, dark clothing, baseball cap, carrying a camera. Always watching, never interfering. One witness from 1986 said the man had taken his picture right before his wife disappeared. Another, from 1999, said the man had warned him to leave, that the woods weren't safe. But no one knew who he was. No name, no address, no identity. Just a ghost who haunted Highway 57, documenting the disappearances and then vanishing. I also found something else, something that made my blood run cold. In 1952, there was a report of a small community that used to exist in the woods off Highway 57. A religious sect, maybe 20 or 30 people who'd built cabins and lived off the land. They'd been there for years, mostly kept to themselves. But in the winter of 1952, a county surveyor doing a land assessment had gone into the woods and found the community abandoned. Cabins still standing, belongings left behind, but no people. All of them gone. The state police had investigated, found no signs of foul play, no bodies, no evidence of what happened. The official report concluded that the community had simply dispersed, moved on to other locations. But the surveyor who'd found the abandoned site had written a note in the margin of his report. 4 words, underlined twice. Something watches in the woods. I tracked down the surveyor's descendants, found a grandson living in Poughkeepsie. His name was Thaddeus Veller, though everyone called him Thad. He was in his 60s, ran a small auto repair shop on the south side of town. When I showed up and asked about his grandfather, he went pale. "You're asking about the woods," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, your grandfather found an abandoned community there in 1952. I need to know what he saw." Thad wiped his hands on a rag, looked around his shop like he was making sure no one was listening. "My grandfather never talked about it, not to anyone. But before he died, he gave me something. Said if anyone ever came asking, I should show them." He led me to a back office, pulled out an old metal lockbox from under his desk. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, pages yellowed with age. "This is his field journal from that survey. Read it, and then decide if you really want to know." I took the journal, sat down, and started reading. And what I found inside changed everything. The journal was written in tight, precise handwriting, the kind that came from someone who took their work seriously. The first few entries were mundane. Survey notes, measurements, property boundaries. But then, about halfway through, the tone changed. The handwriting got shakier, the notes more erratic. Found the community today, approximately 2.3 miles into the forest, accessible via old logging road. 27 structures, all cabins, arranged in a rough circle around a central clearing. No electricity, no running water. Signs of recent habitation but no people. Checked every structure. Personal belongings still present. Food on tables, some of it fresh. Beds unmade, like everyone just stood up and walked away mid-activity. No signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of violence or foul play. But something feels wrong here. The air is different, colder than it should be. And the silence, complete silence. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just wind through the trees. We'll return tomorrow with assistance to conduct thorough search. Returned with Sheriff Hawkins and 2 deputies. Searched the entire area. Found no bodies, no graves, no evidence of where the community went. Questioned locals in the nearest town, Millbrook, 6 miles east. Most had never heard of the community. One elderly man, Francis Dunmore, claimed he'd delivered supplies there once, about 5 years ago. said the people were strange folk who kept to themselves, spoke in hushed voices, seemed afraid of something. When pressed, Dunmore said the leader of the community was a man named Silas Rourke. Said Silas had come to the area in the 1940s, bought the land cheap, started recruiting people to join him, told them the modern world was corrupted, that only by returning to nature and rejecting technology could they be saved. Sheriff Hawkins found a journal in one of the cabins. We'll review tonight. The journal belonged to Silas Rourke. Its disturbing, rambling entries about voices in the woods, about the land being awake, about something that lived in the forest long before humans arrived. Rourke believed the land had consciousness, that it demanded offerings, that those who lived there had to pay tribute or be taken. The final entry is dated February 10, 1952, 4 days before I found the abandoned community. It reads, "It's calling again, louder this time. All of us can hear it now. Even the children. We've tried to resist, but the pull is too strong. Tonight we will answer. Tonight we will go into the deep woods and give it what it wants, what it's always wanted, ourselves." I don't know what to make of this. Sheriff Hawkins thinks they were a cult, that Rourke was mentally ill and convinced his followers to commit mass suicide. But we found no bodies. Nothing. Where did they go? I went back, against orders. I had to see for myself. Took my camera, documented everything. The cabins are still there, but they look older now, like they've been abandoned for years instead of days. Found strange markings carved into the trees around the perimeter of the community. Symbols I don't recognize. And I saw something, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. Tall, wearing dark clothes, watching me. I called out, but it didn't respond. Just stood there. I took its picture. When I developed the photo, the figure was gone. Just trees and shadows. I don't think I'm going back. I've been having dreams. Every night, the same dream. I'm standing on Highway 57, and someone's calling my name from the woods. I walk toward the voice, and the trees close in around me, and I can't find my way back. I wake up covered in sweat, heart pounding. My wife thinks I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am. But I can't stop thinking about that community, about what Silas Rourke wrote in his journal. What if he was right? What if there is something in those woods? Something old. Something that takes people. I'm done surveying that area. I've told the county to mark it as uninhabitable, not suitable for development. No one should build there. No one should live there. And no one should ever go into those woods alone. That was the last entry. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. Thad was watching me from across the desk, his expression grim. "Your grandfather," I said slowly. "His name was Rourke?" "Yeah, Theodore Rourke. Why?" "Because my last name is Rourke, too." Thad's face went pale. "You're related to Silas?" "I don't know," I said, "but I'm going to find out." I left the shop, got in my patrol car, and drove straight to the county records office. Pulled birth certificates, census records, property deeds, anything I could find on the Rourke family. And slowly the picture came together. Silas Rourke had a brother, Jeremiah Rourke. Jeremiah had left the community in 1948, 3 years before they all disappeared. He'd moved to Poughkeepsie, married, had children. One of those children was my grandfather, which meant Silas Rourke was my great-great-uncle. And if Silas had led his community into the woods, if they'd all been taken by whatever lived there, then my family had been connected to this place for generations. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the documents, trying to process it all. My family, my blood, tied to the disappearances, to the community, to whatever was haunting Highway 57. And then I remembered something. the man with the camera in the woods, the one who'd taken pictures of the missing people, the one who'd said he was just a witness, documenting what happened. What if he wasn't just some random observer? What if he was connected too? What if he was one of them? One of the people from Silas Rourke's community who'd never left? I needed to find him, and I knew exactly where to start. I went back to Highway 57 that night, alone, against protocol, against common sense, against every instinct that told me this was a bad idea. But I had to know. I had to find that man and get answers. I parked at mile marker 36, the same spot where Margaret Vellner's car had been. Grabbed my flashlight, my weapon, and the Polaroid camera Theodore Rourke had used in 1952. Thad had given it to me, along with the journal, said I might need it. I stepped into the woods. The forest was different at night. Darker, denser, more alive. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow seemed to move. I walked the same path I'd taken before, deeper into the trees, my flashlight cutting a narrow beam through the darkness. After 20 minutes, I reached the spot where I'd found Margaret. The ground was still disturbed, her shoe still lying in the mud where I'd left it. But something was different. There were fresh footprints, boot prints, large, leading deeper into the woods. I followed them. The path wound through the trees, up a gradual slope, and then down into a small valley. And there, in the center of the valley, I found them, the ruins of the cabins, Silas Rourke's community. 27 structures, just like Theodore's journal had described. Some had collapsed, roofs caved in, walls rotted away. But others were still standing, skeletal and silent in the darkness. The central clearing was overgrown with weeds, but I could still see the circle of stones that marked where the community had gathered. And standing in the center of that circle was the man with the camera. He didn't turn when I approached, just stood there, facing away from me, camera in his hands. "I knew you'd come back," he said. "Who are you?" I demanded, my weapon drawn but not aimed. "Not yet." He turned slowly. In the moonlight, I could finally see his face. Weathered, lined with age, but unmistakable. He looked exactly like the photographs I'd seen in the county records, the ones of Silas Rourke. "My name is Caleb," he said. "Caleb Rourke. I'm Silas's son." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. The community disappeared in 1952. If you were his son, you'd be 80 years old," Caleb said. "I know, but I'm not. Because I never left. None of us did." "What are you talking about?" Caleb gestured around the clearing. "This place. It keeps us. The ones who answered the call, who walked into the deep woods that night. We're still here. We've always been here. You're saying you've been living in these woods for 70 years. Not living," Caleb said quietly. "Existing. Watching. Waiting. We can't leave. The land won't let us. And every few years it calls to someone new. Someone passing through on the highway. It makes them hear voices, see things, feel compelled to stop and walk into the woods. And when they do, they don't come back. They become like us. Trapped." I felt sick. Brandon Kemper, Dennis Holloway, Claire Hendricks. All of them? "All of them," Caleb confirmed. "They're here, in the woods, not dead, but not alive either. Lost in the spaces between the trees, walking in circles, never finding their way out." "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why does it do this?" "Because it's hungry," Caleb said. "This land, this place, it feeds on people, on their fear, their despair, their isolation. It's been doing it for centuries, long before Silas brought his community here, long before the highway was built. This place has always taken people. And you've just been watching? Documenting it? Doing nothing? What can I do? Caleb said, his voice filled with resignation. I'm trapped here too. I can't leave. I can't warn people. All I can do is take pictures. Make sure there's a record. So that maybe, someday, someone will understand. I raised my weapon, aimed it at him. I should arrest you. Charge you with obstruction, with conspiracy, with whatever I can think of. You can try, Caleb said, but it won't matter. Because you're here now, in the clearing. And once you're here, once you step into the center, the land knows you. It marks you, and eventually it will call to you too. That's bullshit, I said. But even as I said it, I felt something. A cold sensation spreading through my chest, like ice water in my veins. A whisper at the edge of my hearing, too faint to make out but unmistakably there. You feel it, don't you? Caleb said. The pull, it's already starting. I backed away out of the clearing, my heart pounding. I'm leaving, and I'm coming back with a team. We're going to search these woods, find the missing people, and figure out what the hell is really going on here. You won't find them, Caleb said. They're not in the woods anymore, they're part of it. And soon, you will be too. I turned and ran. I made it back to my patrol car, hands shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps. I radioed for backup, told dispatch I'd found the ruins of the community, that I needed a search team immediately. They said they'd send units at first light, but I couldn't wait until morning. I couldn't leave those people out there, lost in the woods, trapped by whatever was haunting this place. So I grabbed emergency flares, a megaphone, and every flashlight I had in my trunk, and I went back in. I searched for hours, calling out names, firing flares into the sky, sweeping my flashlight through the trees. And I found nothing, no people, no signs of life, just empty woods and the sound of wind through the branches. But I heard them. Voices, faint and distant, calling back to me. Help! I'm lost. Where am I? Different voices, different people. All of them somewhere in the darkness. All of them just out of reach. I followed the voices deeper into the woods, farther than I'd ever gone before. And that's when I saw them. Not people. Shapes. Humanoid figures made of shadow and mist, moving between the trees, always just at the edge of my vision. When I aimed my flashlight at them, they vanished. When I looked away, they reappeared. And then I saw something that made me stop cold. A figure sitting against a tree, head down, unmoving. I approached carefully, weapon drawn. When I got close enough to see clearly, I recognized the jacket. It was the same one Brandon Kemper had been wearing in his missing person photo. "Brandon?" I called out. The figure didn't respond. I moved closer, reached out to touch his shoulder. The moment my hand made contact, the figure collapsed. Not fell, collapsed, like it was made of ash and dust, disintegrating at my touch, leaving nothing but empty clothes and the smell of decay. I stumbled backward, my flashlight dropping from my hand, and that's when I heard it. A voice, not from the woods, from behind me. "Officer Rourke." I spun around. Caleb was standing there, camera in hand. That same sad expression on his face. "You shouldn't have touched him," Caleb said. "He was barely holding on. Now he's gone completely." "What is this?" I shouted. "What the hell is happening?" "The land," Caleb said. "It doesn't kill people. It absorbs them, slowly, over months, years, decades. They become part of the forest, part of the soil, part of the trees. That's what happened to Silas's community. That's what's happening to all of them. Then we stop it," I said. "We burn it down. We clear the land. You can't," Caleb interrupted. "The land is too old, too deep. Fire won't touch it. Bulldozers can't clear it. It's been here longer than humans have walked this earth, and it will be here long after we're gone. Then what do? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Caleb raised his camera, aimed it at me. You do what I do. You bear witness. You make sure people know, and you try not to answer when it calls your name. He took my picture. The flash blinded me for a second. When my vision cleared, he was gone. The search team arrived at dawn. Sheriff Crane, 6 deputies, 2 canine units, and a forensic team. We spent 3 days combing those woods, searching every inch of the area around the ruins. We found the remnants of Silas Rourke's community. We found old belongings, rotted furniture, the stone circle in the clearing. But we didn't find any people. Not Brandon Kemper, not Dennis Holloway, not Claire Hendricks, not any of the 16 people who'd disappeared over the past 40 years. Just empty woods and the feeling that we were being watched. I didn't tell them about Caleb. Didn't mention the figures made of shadow or the voice that had called my name. I just filed my report, said I'd found the ruins but no evidence of recent activity, and recommended the area be cordoned off and marked as a hazard zone. Sheriff Crane approved the recommendation. They put up fencing, posted warning signs, closed off the access roads. Officially, the case was still open, but unofficially, everyone moved on. Just another unsolved mystery in a county full of them. Margaret Vellner recovered fully. She didn't remember much about her time in the woods, just that she'd heard her daughter's voice and followed it. The doctors attributed it to a dissociative episode brought on by grief and hypothermia. She never went near Highway 57 again. I kept working patrol, kept driving that stretch of road every night, but I never stopped in the Devil's Stretch anymore. Never pulled over, never investigated abandoned cars, never went into the woods. I just drove through, windows up, radio loud, trying to drown out the whispers I sometimes heard on the wind. Because Caleb was right. The land had marked me. I could feel it. A cold presence in the back of my mind, always there, always waiting. Sometimes, when I'm driving late at night and the road is empty, I hear my name, soft, distant, coming from the trees. Gideon. Gideon Rourke. Come into the woods. We're waiting. I don't answer. I keep driving. Keep my eyes on the road, my hands on the wheel. But I know it's only a matter of time. Because everyone who steps into that clearing, everyone who hears the call, eventually goes back. They can't help it. The pull is too strong. 3 months after I found the ruins, I got a call from Thad Veller. He'd found something else in his grandfather's belongings. A box of photographs, Polaroids, taken in 1952, of the abandoned community. And in one of the photos, standing at the edge of the clearing, was a figure I recognized. Caleb Rourke, looking exactly the same as he did when I saw him, not aged a day. On the back of the photo, Theodore Rourke had written a note. Saw this man watching me. Took his picture. When I developed it, I could see him clearly. But when I went back to the clearing, he was gone. I don't think he's human anymore. I keep that photo in my locker at work. Look at it sometimes, trying to understand. Trying to make sense of what I saw, what I experienced, what's still calling to me every night. Last week, there was another disappearance. A woman named Patricia Monroe, driving home from a business conference in Albany. Her car was found on Highway 57, mile marker 39, engine running, driver's door open. No signs of struggle. No trace of Patricia. Sheriff Crane assigned me to the case. Told me I had the most experience with these incidents, that I was the best person to investigate. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him I couldn't, that going back into those woods would be a mistake. But I didn't. Because I'm a cop. And it's my job to find missing people, even when I know I won't find them. Even when I know they're already gone. So tonight, I'm going back. Back to the ruins. Back to the clearing. Back to the place where the land is hungry and the voices never stop calling. I've written this all down, documented everything I've seen and heard, stored it in a sealed envelope with instructions to open it if I don't come back. Maybe someone will read it. Maybe someone will understand. Or maybe I'll just become another name in the files. Another unsolved disappearance, another person who stopped on Highway 57 and walked into the woods and never came out. I can hear it now, even as I write this. My name, carried on the wind, seeping through the walls of my apartment. Gideon, come back, come home. I'm trying to resist, trying to stay strong. But Caleb was right. The pull is too strong, and I'm so tired of fighting it. They found my patrol car this morning, parked on the shoulder of Highway 57, mile marker 36, engine running, driver's door open. My weapon was in its holster, my flashlight on the seat, my radio still clipped to my belt. But I was gone. Sheriff Crane organized a search. They brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Searched for 3 days, found nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no body, just empty woods and the sound of wind through the trees. The case is still open, they're still looking, but I know they won't find me, because I'm not out there anymore. Not in the way they understand. I'm in the woods, in the spaces between the trees, walking in circles, hearing voices, seeing shapes, trapped in a place that's older than time and hungrier than death. Sometimes I see the others, Brandon, Dennis, Claire, Patricia, all of us lost together, fading slowly into the land. We try to call out, try to warn people, but our voices are just whispers now, just echoes carried on the wind. And sometimes, late at night when a car stops on Highway 57 and someone gets out and walks toward the tree line, I see Caleb, still standing in the clearing, still holding his camera, still taking pictures of the ones who answer the call.